Hola, mi gente. It's good to see y'all today. It is. I'm glad to see y'all here early. What's up, Sister George? You said you were just talking about me. Well, here I am. Queen Nita. What's up, Ill Doctrine, Kimberly, AJ? Good to see all of you in the building tonight. Tonight is going to be fun, okay? What's up, Momi, gente? Reese, I see you. Fam. I'm glad that you all here, okay? We're going to have a good time tonight. This is going to be an all-men panel, very purposely, very strategically. I handpicked these guys. This is not random. This wasn't like, hey, you ain't doing nothing tomorrow, but come through if you ain't doing nothing. This was specifically, I wanted you, and you on this panel tonight. Now, it is a closed panel unless the conversation begs for chat participation, and then I will open it up. But as it stands right now, this is an all-men panel, and we're going to talk about what's a real man. Now, the word real, right, before man has become a trigger word. As you know, there have been memes about it. There have been debates about it, okay? There have been verbal fisticuffs all through YouTube land about what's a real man, right? I think men get triggered by that. You know what I mean? Women will say, well, I want a real man. And then men will retort, what do you mean, what's a real man? You want a real man, but you got fake hair, fake nails, fake eyelashes, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the story. I'm not telling you anything new. So tonight, I wanted to ask men what a real man is, right? Because men are always saying women don't know what a real man is, and women can't gauge that. So I invited some gentlemen that I've been watching online for a while. Some of these guys, you know, some of these guys are going to be new to you, but they're all gentlemen that I've peeped, right? I've peeped and I'm like, that's an interesting point of view he has, or I've liked the way he's carried himself in debates or arguments, or I like the points of views that this person has. And I was like, these are the guys I want to have this conversation with. And again, it's a closed panel, unless, you know, I got to give the people what they want. I'll open it if I must, but for now, it's just going to be these guys. And I think it's going to be, you know what I mean, a panel that's going to be abundant with information. And is why I'm doing a closed panel today. But again, you never know what can happen on the block, and you never know who's going to pull up. So without further ado, I want to invite my invitees. We got, I know you know this guy. Mr. O is just living.
Hello.
I got Big Hef in the building. And I got Alpha Villains. Hello, gentlemen. Hello.
What's good?
It's so good to see y'all. First and foremost, I'm doing something new where I'm gonna, before I even start blabbing, I want you guys to introduce yourselves, talk about your channel and the topics that you cover, and let people know that they can follow you. Because I think we wait to the end of the stream to do that, and then most people are tired or gone or they're not in the mood. So I want to catch people early. Please introduce yourselves in order: Mr. O, Big Hef, and then Alpha Villains, and let people know where they can find you right now at the onset before we get into this. Por favor.
Hello. I'm Mr. O, and I am Just Living. My channel is Mr. O is Just Living. I host a show every Tuesday and Thursday evenings at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time with my player partner down below, Big Hef, and it's called A Player's Perspective. We over there having a good time, a little fun show for you, but we dropping advice and giving men something to follow, something to aspire to be, and women something to follow.
Definitely. I am Big Hef. The HAH is for House of Hustle. That's my crew. We've been doing our thing forever. My channel is, as it says right there, you can find me on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I post a lot about just the power of thinking and, you know, building yourself up and manifesting the things in life that you dream and wish to aspire to be. So come check me out. And you can get you some merch too. Playersperspective.shop, you know.
I appreciate you, Jen. Thank you for having me on, man. It's an opportunity for me. I go by the name of AV. You guys call me AV, aka Alpha Villains. I'm new to the space, so I'm kind of green to this shit. I got a YouTube channel, Alpha Villains. I do a morning show, Finish Your Breakfast with AV, Monday through Friday, 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And basically, my goal is to change the narrative, right? Because, like I said, I'm new to the space, but there's a big perceived and misconceptions about men pursuing becoming better, right? And they're villainized for it. So that's why I came up with the name Alpha Villains, because a lot of guys, when they want to become better, you know, they're bashed for it. So I kind of want to change that, you know what I mean? And I want to kind of put a different perspective, because for me, my goal is to kind of bring men up without having to tear someone else down, whether it's a woman or a man. So that's my perspective. But you know, let's see. Like I said, I'm new, but I appreciate you for letting me come on.
Well, thank you for being here. Hef and you guys have a show after this, right? What time?
9 o'clock. It's an hour.
Okay, in an hour. And then AV, your next show is when?
My next show's in the morning, so I got a little bit of time too, but I'm good right now.
Okay, I'm just letting the people know when they
Appreciate
can see you. If they like you here, they will pop up in your chat. Last but not least, we have Brother Ish on.
How you doing, everybody? I'm
Good
on
stuff.
daddy duty right now.
We here. So just mute your mic as you see fit. I know, Brother Ish, you don't have a channel yet, but you've been a pretty decent commentator in these spaces thus far. So I wanted you on the panel as well. Are you planning to have a channel anytime soon?
I am, but I'm not going to go into the blogging. I'm going to go more into filmmaking and its processes and protocols.
Okay, and what do you do in filmmaking?
I'm an assistant director. I and direct and produce as well. So that's my role and responsibilities.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's get right in. I like getting right in. Now that we pay some bills to take care of the business, and again, I'm going to repeat this at the end for people that will be coming in late. Thank you, chat, for being here. Thank you, Queenita, for being the most amazing moderator in all the YouTube land. All right, guys, so let's jump right into it, because I like getting right to the point. You guys know how I do here. You know, the title is "What is a Real Man?" Let's ask the men. You guys are men. Why do you think that there's such, you know, a trigger? Why do you think a word as simple as the word "real" has become such a trigger word? I'm from the school of it. If it don't apply, let it fly. But I noticed there you know, a myriad of people that are not like me, and certain words trigger them. So why do you think the word "real" is such a trigger word for men?
Well, before I was considered to be a man by other peers alike, I thought I knew it all too. And when you think you knew it all, you know it all. Your ego is involved, and that real is a trigger word for somebody who's egotistical and thinks that he already has accomplished what he needed to in order for the world to see him as who he think he is, and that's just not true. It's a shock that comes in later in your life, closer to 30, when you realize that everything you thought you knew weren't worth shit. And so, like, for an actual man who is seen as a man by men like him, the word real wouldn't affect him in that way, and he damn sure wouldn't get out of pocket to express how he felt about it. So that's how I feel.
Have?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to be secure in thought and your sense of self. You got to know who you are in order to represent or stand for anything in particular. So if you have an issue with someone saying you're not a real man, well, perhaps you're not living up to their ideal or standard. But if everything in your life is in order, then forget what somebody else's definition of something is. You gotta be secure in self. And if your things that are in order, your house is in order, you good. It's a wide spectrum of what it means to be a man, and I don't think you can let anybody else define that for you.
Okay. AV, what you got for us? By the way, your background is amazing. People commenting.
I appreciate you. Yeah. Shout out to the chat. Thank you, Jen. Yeah. So you said something important, Jen, in your monologue, in regards to the rebuttal that most men say when they're dressed as being real, right? So a lot of dudes right now are trying to compare themselves to women. Yo, women can do this, women could do that. Women come out with waist trainers, eyelashes, and all that shit. And they're mad. So at the end of the day, a lot of guys get triggered because of the word real, because there's a lot of trauma there, right? So Big Hef said, if your house is in order and everything's in order, that won't phase you. But unfortunately, most men, black men in particular, and I'm not going to turn it into a racial thing, but most men in particular, black men in particular, don't have an identity, right? So they're always looking for another race or somebody else to give them that identity. As a result of that, so when you allow somebody to define you, and it doesn't sit well with your instinct, you wind up doing wrong things, bad mistakes, etc. And then you wind up wasting time. Then there's resentment. You see a lot of guys on YouTube in the manosphere, there's a lot of trauma there. You see a lot of niggas that we know that can't get broads, and they're the one teaching niggas how to get broads. And then you see a lot of other dudes who are emotional that are leading a charge of men who are on the computer, who ain't never been outside, and they're trying to do shit. And then what happens is when they're not real and their outcomes are not working with women, they have a lot of resentment. And this is why this is a very dangerous platform. We have an opportunity to have a voice, but everybody can't have a voice. You know what I mean? So real men is not a one size fits all, because a lot of guys on YouTube say that you got to be a real man if you jacked up, you got muscles, you got a Lamborghini, you on boats and shit like that, you got money. And then there's another side of dudes that say you don't need none of that. You can still get the end result with your women. So at the end of the day, it's all about knowing yourself. But you can't know yourself if you're looking at somebody else to tell you who you are. These coaches now, everybody's a coach. I saw it on my Instagram, matter of fact, $35 to get a life coaching certification. I'm like, yo. So at the end of the day, for me, I'm old school too. I'm from New York. I'm old school. And I didn't, I'm from Haitian descent, and my father wasn't around. He was typical, Caribbean lover and shit. And I didn't have a lot of guidance. So that caused me to waste a lot of my time. So I had to redefine myself and find out what was real and what wasn't. And it's hard nowadays because the guidance, you hear a lot of these guys on YouTube, they say, you're like the father I never had. And they're allowing these people that they've never met to define what masculinity is. And now there's a big disconnect. So I know that was long-winded, but guys get triggered because the advice that they're getting isn't pertinent to them. It's just a generic statement, and it's not a one size fits all.
Ooh, okay, long-winded but necessary. Okay, I don't mind long-winded if it's good. Okay, I'm a reader and I'm a listener, so I'm cool with that. You guys brought up a great point. I don't believe that it's a one-size-fits-all either. I know we've heard a lot. You have to have the boats. You have to have this tax bracket. You got to be high value, and high value means X, Y, and Z. I think that it depends on the individual, right? I look at the word real man, and I'm like, okay, it's a man that's hecho y derecho. I know you guys don't know what that means, but I'll translate. Just basically means, he has all his affairs in order. He's able to take care of the children that he brought into the world. He's stable financially. No need to be wealthy. Just be stable financially. I don't want to be in your house, and then it's like the lights are going to be off while we're at dinner, right? A good father, a good understanding man who's in touch with his sensitive side when he's dealing with feminine energy, right? So I think a real man can mean a lot of different things. And I think the word real has become this one size fits all. And I think that's what triggers people, because they're constantly feeling like it's not enough. And AV, you brought up an excellent point that a lot of these guys on social media, we can't ignore it, right? Like it's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like the monster. It's like the snowball rolling down the hill, turning into the big monster, where we're seeing more and more of these characters pop up as coaches and more minions that follow. And it's sad because they are referring to these men as godfather, father. I'd say that those are their cyber daddies. And it's more than a joke. These men are being looked up to. They're being looked at for advice, what have you. So it's really, really dangerous. So when you all spoke about, you come online and you give men advice, you tell me why the advice you give to men is more sound than something they can get on someone that's more famous. We don't need to name names, but someone who's more popular in the YouTube, YouTube verse. Why is listening to you would say healthier, more positive, more productive than listening to one of those guys that has 1 million followers?
I think that advice, the way that it's packaged, can be dangerous because you give a high-powered weapon to someone with no weapons training, and they'll blow their own head off. So for them, the type of people that are listening to, you got to understand, man, for things to be received, it has to be packaged in a way that it can be acceptable. It's got to be presented in a certain way.
Mhm.
And these guys already have issues that they on the borderline of like not even functioning socially in society a certain way. So to give them a loaded weapon like this, you're giving them too much too fast, and you're not delivering it in a way that they can actually utilize it. I may interpret something that Kevin Samuel says in a way that a little kid with no father in a little room, never had a girlfriend, may misinterpret. So I think that it should be packaged a different way, and perspective, which is why we call it a player's perspective, is very important. The perspective is always multiple perspectives that are alive in any given situation, and for the perspective of where these guys need to go, I think that they don't need to get it that way.
Okay.
Experience is very important. You obviously want to listen to and talk to someone who has physically been involved in the things that they're speaking on and preaching on. One of the most frustrating things to me to ever happen in life was when it dawned on me that I'm in business school with a bunch of teachers that don't have any businesses. They're essentially being paid to read to me.
Right.
And I was extremely irritated when I realized how much I paid these people to read to me. And I'm like, not near one of you have a business. Y'all have no experience business wise. Y'all don't have anything to offer me other than what's in this book. And I could have read this damn book by myself for a whole lot cheaper, you know. And that's a lot of what's going on is people learn about something the best way they can, and then they want to regurgitate that information when they haven't been in the field themselves. So whenever I'm talking to somebody, I'm speaking from experience. I'm speaking about something I've went through, something I've thought about extremely a long time, and I can tell you firsthand experience of what it's going to feel like, how you're going to feel when you don't have anybody in your corner, or when you're trying to accomplish something, or whatever the subject is. And like, that's what's most important to me when I'm trying to help somebody.
Okay.
Excellent points, man. I mean, to piggyback on what Mr. O and Jen said, Jen said something that I kind of go by too. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. And in regards to the question, why do we think our word is bond? I don't necessarily think my word is bond. I mean, like Hef said as well, it's all about experiences, right? So it behooves younger people to listen to people who are a little bit older, not necessarily because we were better, but it's because we've lived a little bit more.
Mhm.
Nowadays, young people are so impressionable, and like you said, Jen, they have cyber daddies. If it's not on Google, they're gonna fact check you. They'll fact check the doctor. They'll fact check everybody to make sure it's not on Google, and they rather listen to the internet than someone who's actually been through it. In regards to why I think men don't have an opportunity for discernment, and you only get that through trial and error. A lot of people are too fearful to lose. And that's how we learn. We don't learn by winning. We learn by losing and making mistakes. And at the end of the day, there's so much content out there. It's similar to how women get confused. They often say women are oftentimes confused because they have an abundance of selection of men, suitors to go after them. The same thing for these guys, man. I mean, like I said, I'm a newer content creator, and I got some supporters, and they rock it with me in that hour, and then I see them on another channel rocking with somebody that says something totally different. So for me, it's not about me being the end all be all, but it's all about having that discernment. And guys, it's not a one size fits all, man. Everybody does something different. Like Mr. O said, you got to have proper training. You can't give somebody a gun just because I'm a natural at shooting. Doesn't mean that Jen may be a natural at shooting. So like I said in the beginning, everybody got a voice, but not everyone is qualified to speak on it. And people don't have discernment. It's a black and white thing. And it's like everybody's on the spectrum, bro. It's like you got to explain shit to people like, with all due respect, like they're autistic, right? Because you have to literally break it down to the molecule for people to understand. And people don't have the patience to actually learn what's really going to make them be functioning in this society.
Thank you. Brother Ish, we're discussing what you give a lot of advice, right? Sit up here in your little soapbox, right? We all do. But why do you think you're qualified, or why, like how AV put it, your word is bond, or why should younger men listen to you?
Well, I'll bear witness to what AV was stating, is that, you do learn through trial and error, and I've made many errors. And I'm very comfortable in expressing that. I've been, just to give a brief history, I've been in the Nation of Islam since 1989, which shows that I subscribe to a certain belief system and a philosophy. I found that it works for me. I don't necessarily impose that on anyone else. I always just invite them to the opportunity to learn what I've learned, and grow from, and gain from whatever I've achieved from, going through this practice. Growth is a process. We start off as, once you're born, you are either male or female. From that point on, you're a baby, a toddler, a child, a teen, an adult, and then, if you go through spiritual growth, whatever titles are attached to those intellectual and spiritual growths from adulthood. With that, my personal qualifications are, I look at myself as a developing and evolving male, because I hold a high standard to the term man. Man is a very evolved and influential position in society, and I think that, in history there's been very few that we can identify as men, and those are individuals who have been marked and highlighted, whether they've been good or bad, and then you can determine, where they fall in based upon, their imbalances or balances. So I generally am growing into my manhood, even though I'm up in the years. That's just a true understanding. I've been married before. I understand that process. And I knew that I grew from the interaction with certain women that I've been with and women that I've lost. So I guess my experience, in being in the Nation and being a senior lieutenant in the Nation, and taking our teachings and training and applying them to, different types of men that go from gangbangers to doctors to lawyers to scholars. You run across a lot of different differentials, but you always find that there's a common denominator. And once you start to understand and identify that, then you can start working through the process of developing each individual into their potential reality. So that's where I find my experience. I'm a father of four. 3 of my children have gone to college. I've been a single father, so I've done that, and I'm doing that currently. So that's where I believe that my expertise, I guess, if I had to utilize that, comes from.
Okay, welcome everyone. I see you. I see you. I see you. Truth is never favored. I see you, Vaughn. AJ, what's up? Welcome in the room. Let me do a quick, I missed it earlier, super chat break. I appreciate you, Ill Doctrine. He says, I want to be beautiful. I want to pull up on the block in a mothership. I want to be beautiful. I want to be a block star. These are my commercial breaks, and I love them. I appreciate you, Ill Doctrine. AV, you said something so important, and it is an understatement. You mentioned discernment. I know I've been on many a panel, and I've had a debate or two with certain gentlemen. And at the time, they do the verbal fisticuffs with me, then they retract. Then I'll see them on another panel. As you said, we see these guys on other panels completely destroying my points, completely misconstruing, completely taking out of context, and just building this whole new narrative about what I said. So it's very hard to be on these panels and even have these, debates and these discussions with the quote unquote resolution in mind. I hear that word thrown around a lot, right? Well, let's get to the resolution. I don't believe that we can find resolution in these spaces, and if we can, they're very far and few in between because there's so much trauma on these panels. I want to talk about, you guys spoke about your experiences and why you're qualified, even though your word's not bond, why you're qualified, you think, to talk to men that are younger because you have more experiences, right?
Right.
Why do you feel that way versus the man who's gone through the same experiences but is blaming everybody, their mama, their baby mama, their ex-wives, their children? What was it about you guys that you came to the realization as like, okay, this is why I can convey this message even though I've been through it? Why aren't you bitter and angry and cursing women out on social media like we see so often? I would love this answer from all of you, please.
Okay. Yeah, let me.
All right.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I guess we keeping the order because we're gonna
Oh
get out
yeah.
of here soon. But if I want to say that like something that Brother Ish said reminded me of something I say all the time, that a man is a title. I look at it like a title that you earn versus that you just acquire because you have male organs. And back in the day, like even there was a rite of passage before you became a man. And that was something that a friend of ours we were talking about, like in today's time, what would be the rites of passage that would be considered to be a man. But I think that like we're just collecting data as of yet in our culture because it's one of the newest cultures, and where we are currently, we've seen some of the trauma that came from the generations that came behind us, and now we're coming up in more of informative age and gotten to see some of the damage that was done. And I just think fortunately we have been able to make some corrections that have been promising, and turn more results versus like to this day, our generation. I talked to this with one of my good friends who's from Southeast Texas, and which we have a lot of similarities where our fathers really just didn't have a lot of information to give us. As things were kind of structured the way that they were, and we're coming into all these new issues in life right now that are foreign to them, and I don't think they have answers for us. I don't think they have answers for the way that things were going, and I don't think there are a lot of men that were present. And we're also on the edge of a lot of males being possessing a lot of feminine responses to life as well, just being raised by women. So we're still new coming into like why to answer all the whys, but I can see some things that I can point out to maybe that have caused some of the rift, and why things are the way they are. But we're gonna have to redefine what the rites of passage are for men to be men, and really like stick to that. There has to be some type of basis. I don't like. I agree with Hev. Like, not all men are created equal, but to be actually considered to be a man, period, like there has to be something. I don't know what they are. I don't have the answers, but rites of passage ain't going killing the lion no more. But there's got to be something.
Hef, what would you say? Why aren't you running rampant on social media, blaming women and God and hell and hot water for anything you've been through?
Well, it's not solution oriented. Accountability is very important. You can't have anything in life if you're not able to look at the man in the mirror and like what you see. And I feel like most people, they say what they think you want to hear, and they feel like that's going to get them by most of the time in life. That's how, a lot of people end up getting a job at somewhere and they don't fit the job description. They lied heavily on the resume. That's happening in relationships, marriages, all across the board. People tend to try and tell people what they want to hear instead of being honest. And if you don't have that ability to be honest, then you're going to open up a lot of wounds. You're not going to be able to heal. You're not going to be able to grow because you're still not accepting what you've been through, or you're not accepting that maybe you don't have the answers or you haven't grown enough in certain areas. So, you're just kind of rolling with the punches, and you wake up one day and, you're miserable for certain things. You're mad at this woman, you're mad at this circumstance, and you're just not getting anywhere. So for me, it's going to be the accountability, your ability to observe your reality and make changes based off of that desired outcome.
You know, for me, what you see, whatever if you've looked at my content, like Brother Ish said, I'm a work in progress. So to keep it real, yeah, initially, you know, I was mad at women. You know, when I first came into the space, my content was geared towards, you know, cheering on people that were saying things that I was thinking, but I didn't know how to articulate it, right?
Okay.
But you know, and I've been doing this for about a year, but I got, you know, but then I started to realize there was really no resolution in debating with someone who doesn't want to change, right? So for me, you know, it's all about savoring your time and your energy, right? You know, allocating your time and energy is very important, especially as you age. And, you know, I'm a work in progress. You know, I walk the line. When this mic comes off and shit, I have problems. You know what I mean? I'm dealing with some shit. I'm still trying to heal my own traumas, but um, like, like, you know, like he said, it's all about accountability. And accountability is learned. It's not something that you just wake up and say, yo, I'm gonna be accountable because you heard your favorite dating coach say it. It takes time because sometimes we live in denial. And every day we got to be able to look ourselves in the mirror and say, okay, I did this, I did that. So every relationship that I messed up was either A, lack of knowledge, B, stubbornness, or if I was listening to this type of content, I was trying to apply something that made sense. I liked what it meant, but it didn't apply to my situation because, like you said, Jen, a lot of dudes think a real man can't be in touch with his feminine side, right? Or have a sensitive side. I'm not saying you got to cry and shit like that, but what I'm saying is you got to be in tune because it's kind of like if you're talking to a baby, you got to kind of simmer down. You can't talk to the baby looking down. You got to go down to his level. Same thing as for a woman, right? So women and men are different. You got to be able to talk to a woman and know her wiring so you can be as effective and a good communicator. So initially, you know, I think we all go through, if you've ever been heartbroken, you ever were lied to, you ever made some mistakes and you try to do it right and it didn't work out, you're going to have some type of resentment and be bitter. So the problem on YouTube, a lot of these guys, it appears that they haven't healed from that. And now they want, you know, like they say, misery loves company. So they're spreading that resentment and that bitterness to these impressionable kids that never even been married, never had their heart broken, ain't got no bodies on them. And for me, the reason why I came into this space and how my content has kind of evolved a little bit is because, you know, initially when I looked at the content, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. But then I started looking at the comments and the stands and the fans. And I'm like, yo, you got stands and fans doing dumb shit for these guys because they said to do it. And I'm like, nah, you can't do that, bro, because you don't even know yourself. And that dude doesn't even care about you unless you super chat him. So at the end of the day, you have to, in order to have conviction and know what the hell you're talking about, like Brother Ish said, he been through some stuff. You have to go through some shit. You got to cry. You got to go through some shit so you can heal from that. So that way, in the event something happens again, because nothing is forever, you handle it like an adult and you learn from it and you keep it moving. So I went through those phases. And like I said, I'm still healing, right, from life. But every day I try to get better and I try to hold myself responsible because as men on the mic, we have a certain responsibility to at least try to be the proof and the change we want to see. We can't talk all this shit and be righteous and then do something that's totally different. We human, but you still got to try to walk that line. And this is my stance.
Oh, okay. Well, well, amen. Even though I'm an atheist, you said something so important that it is okay to be angry. It is okay to be traumatized after something really horrible has happened to you, or you feel someone betrayed you. We've all been there, all of us. I don't think there's one person walking the earth who hasn't been betrayed. And it's healthy to go through that, right? I tell my daughter, it's okay that you're heartbroken. It's okay that you were angry, but then you have to, it's your responsibility to start dismantling that. How did you participate? How did you stay in this too long? What did you see and what did you see but didn't leave? What warnings were there? And I think when you start, the word accountable is also thrown around a lot, but it's so important. And I like how you broke it down, that it is a process. You don't just wake up one day and become an accountable person. It took me time. It took me years actually to Well, Jen, how did you participate in that? Did you stay too long after you already saw what it was? Did you participate in the toxicity? Were you in and out of
Mm,
the relationship yourself? You know what I mean?
mm,
Were you
yeah,
committed all the way? Like
right.
you need this person to be committed? And I think when you sit down with yourself, and it's tough talk on yourself, when you sit down with yourself and you ask yourself those questions, then you're able to heal and you're not a maniac, you know what I mean, in Kevin Samuels chat box, right? um so what's up? I see you, ill doctrine. Speaking of super chats, AV. Super chat break. Thank you, ill doctrine. He says a real man has important parts like attaining and willingness to share surplus resources, appropriate initiation and application of violence, sincerity, accountability, etc.
Yeah, Jen, you said something important that I wanted to touch on really quickly.
Yeah.
In regards to what you said about did I stay too long? Like, for me, in the process of trying to learn yourself, I went through those phases too, where I don't think a real man should disrespect a woman. However, a real man shouldn't tolerate disrespect from a woman. And the way that I combated that, I tried to overpower the disrespect. So if my lady was disrespectful to me, I justified staying in a toxic relationship by being more disrespectful. And you can't do that, because then not only are you wasting time, something that could have been salvaged, because it was a decent relationship that if we could have communicated better, but I wouldn't have known that unless I went through that. And I couldn't say that unless I went through that. So you have to have standards and you have to know yourself. That's another word that gets thrown out: standards, standards, standards. But a lot of niggas don't even know themselves. So at the end of the day, these vocabulary and these key words that people say, you have to kind of identify and define what your standards are, not what mine, Jan's, or anybody else's, because you may be able to tolerate some shit that I don't, and vice versa. And if you could communicate that with your partner, you got a better shot of making something work that can be beautiful, because relationships are not bad. As long as you guys are managing them properly to the way you want it, you should be good.
Right. Okay, let me move this. So that's, see, we're making progress here. And I told you guys when I was promoting this show tonight, there's gonna be some grown talk here. There's gonna be some mature talk, okay?
Word.
Speaking of, since we're in this space, right? Something that stood out to me for all you gentlemen actually is watching you interact with people that were sometimes vitriolic or negative, sometimes women, you know what I mean? Being very combative. And it was interesting to watch because I'm so used to men in these spaces being what I call hysterical. Okay.
Right.
I literally now seen men be hysterical. And I promise you, no exaggeration, I hadn't seen that prior to my time on YouTube. I've never seen a man reach the heights that I've seen, on this platform. Now I've seen it, with women all the time. I've been one of them, but I'm a little taken aback where I've seen men do it, and it kind of makes me like, is that what I look like when I'm being hysterical? Well, let me get into my masculine because I don't like how that looks, right? I don't like how that looks. So let me throw on my pants and my tool belt because that looks horrible. It looks absolutely horrible. So please, for the people watching, because I know I have a lot of hysterical men lurking, respectfully, can you tell me why is it that you're able to maintain, right, that masculinity, even when someone's online and biting your head off? And let me add this. I've seen men who have pretended and I thought were that way, but you poke them just a little bit and they become hysterical. They never hold it down. So what is it that you guys, why are you guys so centered? Because it's something I've seen and frankly, I admire. I'm like, wow, he didn't go off. It's pretty entertaining to watch, to be quite honest. So what is it that keeps you there, Mr. O? You have been
All right.
perfect.
I'm gonna answer, but I want to start by saying, because I want y'all, for the guys who are like this, to receive this. I have not always been perfect. I got F's on my report card. I used to respond to life the same way. I used to watch the women in my family fight about everything. That's how I was. But I want you to know that men, becoming men, you have the power mentally to mentally respond to life and respond to emotions in a way that you can get the outcome that you want. You don't show up by yelling at a woman. You give a woman a reason to calm down. And this is what's important that you got to always remember. I call it I call it cross dressing. That's what it seemed like to me, man. You finally pulled your skirt up and showed us that you wearing panties underneath. When you up there yelling at a woman face to face, just arguing to the teeth. Like, this is crazy, man. This is a little bitty woman, man. And I wanted to say something else, but you cannot, you don't gain nothing from it, man. You don't gain anything from it. It isn't productive. She's not hearing you. And at the end of the day, we're trying to get something done. We're trying to get the bridge built. We're trying to get some. We're trying to do something. So yeah, you can't do that if you can't hear you. And if she feel you, she can't hear you, man. So
I've seen you exit so gracefully off of many a panel, right? And in my mind, I'm watching it happen, and I'm like, I know why he did that, right? And then you'll leave, and people will be talking a lot of jazz, like, yeah, he couldn't take it. And I was like, no, that was some man shit, what he just did. That's why he left. And anyone who knows that behavior knows what that is. And this is why I wanted to have this panel, because guys like you get called all kinds of things, right? Like, Sam, he couldn't take it, he's gonna cry in the car. I was like, you people don't even recognize a man being a man when you see it, and that's dangerous. That's very, very dangerous. And men do it, and women do it too. It's not just men. I've seen both genders do it. And I'm like, you don't even realize some man shit when you see it. This is crazy. But please do tell us, why is it that sometimes you just bow out and give them the deuces? How are you able to do that instead of getting in a verbal fisticuffs with women, especially?
Well, the purpose of communication is to get a message across. And if the person you're communicating with doesn't want to receive a message, I'm kind of just wasting my breath. I'm an asthmatic. I could use that oxygen for myself. You know what I'm saying? Something that I've always lived by is that practice makes perfect. Okay. It takes 30 days to create a habit. So if you've been communicating a particular way your entire life and it only takes 30 days to create a habit, you've only gotten better at that behavior. And, just growing up, my grandfather was a very strong man, and he always was composed. He was always poised. And I always admired that. Nobody ever was able to poke at the bear and get that grizzly. If you want some hands, he'll give you some hands, but you're not going to get him out of character. Only time he ever raised his voice was when he was behind the pool pit. And I would watch my mom. She does this thing where I call it the breakdown artist. Something happens and just all reasoning and logic goes out the window and they become hysterical. So from a very young age, I had to kind of be a voice of reason in the house and calm her down a lot of times. And so I've been practicing that for a very long time. So it only got easier to do the older that I got. And a lot of the times, just being a teen, being a young adult, you see men get into it with other men because, they have different viewpoints or, whatever their egos are clashing. And I never had that issue because I don't care about this subject enough to come out of my place of comfort. I'm not coming down from the heavens to deal with your hellish ways. So, it's as simple as that. Practice makes perfect.
AV, what you got?
Well, and simply put, man, I think, in regards to relationships, I think the man should be the opposite of his lady. So if the lady is, emotional, she's acting erratic, you have to be stoic and poised to kind of calm her ass down. So that way you can have a discussion, right? I think a lot of guys are afraid to appear to be insecure, to let a woman know that this is something that is not tolerable, right? I think you have to have your quote unquote standards and allow a woman to have a discussion, but not be out of pocket. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times, like I said earlier, I was attracted to that toxic shit. You know what I mean? The toxic sex, the toxic woman, I think some of us have gone through those phases when we were younger, and I realized it didn't lead me anywhere. So with age and time, I started to realize what was important to me. And for me, it's peace, right? Peace over pussy. I mean, it's like, it's not because I don't have time. Now, we talked about accountability. For me, I always try to, when and if I'm dating a woman, I'm looking for somebody who is going to compliment me, not necessarily complicate the situation. You know, so I'm not necessarily drawn to that toxicity. I'm drawn to somebody who's gonna be, we can kind of grow together. So it takes time. It takes time and practice. But at the end of the day, man, it's really not worth it, because the loudest dudes, all these girls usually are suckers, because the real killers are quiet, bro. You don't even see these niggas talk. They just like in the cut. But the other loud dudes and the loud broads, they're the ones that are just really the first ones to get knocked out. So at the end of the day, man, when you see these people on panels and shit like that, man, I just don't deal with it. I just kind of exit out, because it's all like cyberbullying, cyber daddies. These people don't know you. They got avatars. They trolling you and shit. So you have to be the example, bro. You know what I mean? You got to be the example. And for me, I just try not to, I don't tolerate any disrespect, because I try to carry myself with respect. But if somebody gets disrespectful, man, you know, it's a case by case basis. But when it comes to women and arguing, nothing's gonna be solved by arguing and emulating what she's doing if you're trying to get a point across.
So super chat break from one of my lovely ladies, Juana Chica. Please follow her, you guys. She has as dope content as I do. Juana Chica on YouTube says, Jen, you look great. Love to hear men acknowledge and take accountability. Juana, I told you that was gonna happen tonight. I told you that. All right, guys. So something it's really quickly. Before I forget the thought. AV, I love that opposite of my lady. I don't think men realize they have to be the opposite
Yin and the yang.
woman. And also, having Mr. O, going back to what you guys said, it's like if someone is being hysterical, what point is there you being hysterical? You have to bring them down. I love that. I love that. Ish, what you got for me?
So hysterical men, for me, are always signs of arrested development. That there's a lack of maturity that exists within that individual, and that's what you're seeing in the hysteria, or you're looking at, you know, how they were reared and the environment they were cultivated in. But for me, and I want to just preface, you know, a lot of things that I'm going to reference come from my faith-based program. So it's not to proselytize or push my program, but just so points of reference for everybody to understand. So in dealing with emotion, we have in the Nation of Study God, rise above your emotion into the higher thinking of God. And that's a tool that has aided me in relationship to keeping from getting emotional, making emotional decisions, but literally sitting down and thinking about what is taking place, who's conflicting with me on the other side, could this have been avoided, seeking fault in self before I seek it in others. There's just different tools that we're given that allow you to go through a process of thought. So when it comes to, you know, being a male and a man, you have to we move on actions. We're an action-based species, and that is why we're physically structured the way that we are. We are the protectors and the providers, and by nature. So with that, you know, as a protector and a provider, you also have to be a strategist. So within that, you have to have a strategic way of thinking, because again, with conflicting with other men, and you'll see this when men engage men or males engage males, that there's an assessment that's done. And I'm not going to engage with this individual because, for lack of a better term, I may get my ass whooped. So I'm going to be a little bit more respectful. I'm going to be a bit more polite. I'm going to be a bit more deferential, because his energy and his physicality could rebound and react to me, and I may not come out on the upside of this scenario. So the problem that we run into is that men or males take advantage of the opportunity when they're dealing with women, because they are physically not as endowed as men, and they know that they can if some level of aggression, they're going to be on the upside of the scenario. Mm-hmm. You know, it's in the nation we're taught, and this is another tool that I've learned, is thinking 5 times before you speak. And it's not looking at somebody and in your mind they're yelling at you and you just like, you motherfucker, you motherfucker. You know, that's not the 5 thoughts. There's actually 5 steps of thinking. The first step in our process is, you know, would you say it to God? Would you want it said to yourself? Is what you're saying true? What are the results of what I'm saying? And would I want it said to me? I'm not sure if I just repeated myself. Mm-hmm. Right. So all these principles and tools, and when brother referenced, you know, a rites of passage, these are the things that aided me in my growth. These are the things that, you know, when properly applied. Now, I've had moments when I didn't apply these teachings, and I found the results of those situations and ran into the consequences of them. But when you have as a young man, a young male, the principles and schools of thought and philosophies, you then can define yourself a certain way. A lot of what aided me is also that I do a lot of reading on this subject. Mm-hmm. There's a book that I read that is very beneficial, Of Man of Steel and Velvet. We talked about the sensitive side of a man. It describes a man having steel qualities as, you know, the guide, the protector, provider, the builder of society, masculinity, character, confidence, and good health. The velvet qualities are understands women, gentleness, attentiveness, youthfulness, humility, and refinement. And then in this book, it gives examples of imbalanced men who had too much on the steel side and not enough on the velvet side. Mm-hmm. And they use a lot of European references, obviously, because this was a European man that wrote this book. But the principles are there. And this is a great assessment for us as males to kind of review and assess and take away what you feel is good for you, and you can throw away what doesn't apply. But when we can start defining manhood and masculinity, true manhood and masculinity, and I think now where we are in society, where you have this gender confusion that's taking place, there's now this drive of redefinition, and that redefinition, you're going to find those who are skilled at it. You're going to see the hustlers who are trying to hustle it. But, you know, we really know innately what is a man. You know a lion when you hear it, as a lion cub, a lion when you hear a lion roar. So you can look at an individual and you can assess them. You can say, you know what, that's not right. And that's one thing that we really have to stand up and speak out on, as those of us who have a level of understanding or a level of sensibilities.
Okay, really quickly, I know Hef and Mr. O have to exit so they can get ready for their stream. I see you, Jada LaRue. What's up? What's up? What's up? I see you. What now, 23G? Glenn Lawrence, how are you? Hey, everybody. Welcome everyone new who just walked in here. This is a really, really dope conversation. I'm glad you guys are here. Please share this with the men in your life and the men who've been going crazy on social media if you have access to them. What's up, Haran? I see you, bro. Okay, so Mr. O and Hef, you guys have to leave, which means we have some slots open on the panel. If you guys want to come up and share your thoughts or ideas. I am going to handpick who I let up today. Please don't take it personally. I just want to keep this conversation on a certain vibe. Okay, so I love you all, but don't kill me for not letting you up. It's not personal. I'm trying to get something out today, right? So I need my cast in order. So please, guys, say goodbye to the chat. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you guys. Let them know what you're about to do on your stream so they can go follow if they want or stay here, whatever. It is all good.
Oh, so I'm Mr. O. You can catch my show or our show, A Player's Perspective, on my channel. Mr. O is Just Living every Tuesday and Thursday. at 9 Central Standard Time. Tonight we are talking about what's the topic tonight?
Hello.
Casual dating.
Right, we're
Is it an
talking
excuse to not
about
give your all?
there you go.
Casual dating being an excuse to not give your all.
Is it an
Yeah,
excuse not to give your all? Casual dating. This is one of Hef's topics. We're gonna dive
yeah.
into it. I got something
Okay,
for
so
it.
that's gonna be happening on Mr. O is Just Living. And how long are you guys going tonight?
We try to top off at 2 hours. Somehow we always bleed into 3, but
All right, so I may go over there and bleed with you.
All
yeah,
right.
we look forward to seeing you. Thank you for having us, Jen. It was a pleasure meeting you, AV. I look forward to catching some of your content. Definitely go
Appreciate you, bro.
follow and
Salute,
check you
salute,
out
guys.
I
Appreciate you.
for
loved it.
sure.
I loved it.
Hi, Big Health. Like, subscribe, watch more of my content. Look forward to seeing some of y'all after Jen's show. We out, baby.
And then there were 3 whenever Brother Ish decides to join us. So I'll keep it going, AV. Wait, how long do I have you for?
Nah, we good, man. We good as long as I'm not doing. We can't do 5 hours, but let's go. We good.
I'm not doing 5 hours tonight.
All right, I bet. And I appreciate you. We good. Let's go.
I got some content to upload myself. So
For sure.
I got to be out of here. I wanted to bring up, I think what we see in these spaces a lot is the problem with, right? The men are constantly saying the problem with women is this. The problem with men is this. I think the problem really is that both genders are not accepting that the other one is different.
Boom.
Right. So while they say the problem with women is this, the problem with men is this, the problem is that you're not accepting that men and women are different. Women are a certain type of human being and men are a certain type of human being. And I think that's where the clash happens, where it's like both genders want the other one to act more like the way they would and handle things the way they would. I love the idea that was brought up earlier, a rite of passage. We don't have one, unfortunately, right? I've watched, Discovery Channel, and I watch the little tribes, and they'll put the little boy's hands in some mitts with some ants, some killer ants, and it's like, he's a man now. Tomorrow, he's a man.
Right.
What do you think a rite of passage would look like in our society, and why do you think rites of passage are necessary?
Man, that's a loaded question, man. I that's tough. I don't know. I think this is gonna sound cliche again, redundant, but it's all about accountability. You said something important that I think the underlying issue that men are mad at women that we're not the same, but yet they want. See, it's like men want to be considered different when it's convenient, and some guys say that women want to do the same thing. Men are comparing themselves to women because women have certain advantages over men, in particular in this particular space, as far as dating, resources, money, etc. Right? So a woman could gain weight and not be in tip-top shape, but she could still get flown out and do all this shit that men can't do. Men need to get over it. It is what it is. I mean, we talk about the wall, we talk about single mothers, we talk about a lot of shit. So the rite of passage, man, I mean, for men, at the end of the day, man, we just have to accept ourselves as being a man and defining who that person is. You start there because there's somebody out there for everybody, but it's like men get mad at women for being able to do shit that they can't do, as opposed to putting in work to do shit that they can do on their own. So I don't know, man. that's gonna be tough because things are changing, Jed. I know that we're older, more mature people, and I miss the 90s, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Because in the 90s, all you had to have a little bit of game, relatively handsome, and you could kill the game. You know what I mean? Now it's like it's different. And I think guys are just trying to adapt to a situation as opposed to trying to fix themselves. So guys, people are not listening to the OGs. They're not, I don't know, man. I don't know. That's a good question. I have no idea.
Woo! You brought up a good point because I've said, hold on, you brought up a good point because I've said it before, where it's like men literally sound jealous of women, that women can get flued out, that women don't have to have a certain tax bracket, that women don't have to be a 10, right?
Shit
that
is
women
real.
don't have to be making money. Like we don't even have to come in 50-50 in relationships.
Facts.
Like we really don't. All we got to do is be half cute and bring a vagina. And
it is what it is. Yeah.
Right. And I noticed that men seem like they're jealous of it. Like they want to be treated like women.
You know, yeah, they men apply what they find and that's another thing. Men apply what they find attractive to women to themselves. This is why they're feminized, and then they want to get mad at the woman for being masculine, but the woman is being masculine because of your lack of masculinity. So again, you with a chick and you supposed to do some shit. You're not handy around the house. That's fine. You don't have to build houses, but you get mad at the woman for doing some shit that you should technically learn how to do. You get mad at her because now you're being feminine. So it's all about the balance, but you got to pick a side. A lot of dudes can't pick a side. You either a man or you're not. And whatever that is, you can't blame a woman for, picking up your slack and you just sitting there and complaining. Women are picking up their slack. They're going after the jobs and all that shit. Now, whatever that does for them in the future, that's irrelevant. We're talking about right now in regards to compatibility. Women are picking up the slack where men are not in terms of masculinity, but yet they want to complain that a woman is too masculine. Now, for me, I'm not attracted to masculine women. I'm attracted to strong women. And if I was ever with a quote unquote alpha woman, she subdued willingly because it was compatible for us. A real man knows how to kind of simmer his ass down. He ain't got to bark and beat his chest all the time when he's around a woman. It doesn't make him a simp. It just makes him complimentary to the woman and vice versa. I don't want a bimbo. I don't want a woman that I can program. I like the tug of war a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's like a snake wanting to kill something that's alive. Right. Snake don't want to eat shit that's dead. So for me, I'd rather kill my own dinner, but I want a woman that's conscious enough to see value in me to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to set him down a little bit because I'm going to let him be the alpha that he needs to be, and I'm going to take the backseat willingly. You know what I'm saying? That's my definition of a real woman and a real man that know their strengths and kind of knows how to turn them on and off when need be.
It's simple math. I always say that.
In colors and shapes, yeah.
It's simple math. Brother Ish, wait, super chat break. Glenn Lawrence, so happy to see you in the chat. He says the problem with this culture is we only talking about accountability and responsibility from one side.
Big fact.
Brother Ish, what you got on that rites of passage and what have you?
Well, I think that, we're absolutely right. There's a definite necessity for rites of passage. I'm gonna say this. Hold on 1 second. I got parental interventions that are occurring, so that's why I'm dipping in and out. So, but the rites of passage is a key aspect that we're missing in this culture, in the society. And you have smaller collectives that have their own form of rites of passage. Gangs do a form of rites of passage, whether you have the ability to kill or do a drive-by or anything of that nature, or you get jumped into a gang. These are the dynamics of that we see, that there is an innate requirement for there to be a rites of passage, but it's being governed by those who are not mature and responsible in that role. So I find that if we can, as a collective body of men, move upon a standard that we know to be right and exact and create and establish a continual rites of passage, that's where we can start changing the direction in society. And that's again what I said the role and responsibility of a man is to have the ability to change the direction of society. And when you see men that step up and do that collectively, then you can say, yeah, that's a man. You look at individuals, that historically activists that have come up and stood up, made the change. Those were defining characteristics of men.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, brother Ish, what you said, because it's like, now let me say this too, bro. You know what I mean? I do believe that the quote unquote red pill and the manosphere, there are good intentions. That's what kind of drew me to this shit, because I know that there's a big need. I'm not talking about the business side. I'm talking about there's a real need, because, at the end of the day, man, in my viewpoint, and I'm not talking about gender wars and all that shit, but men today don't necessarily have a soundboard, right? They don't necessarily have anybody cheering them on. Women have a lot more support today in terms of cheering them on, whether it's bad behavior or good behavior. Men don't necessarily know how to cheer each other on. And this is why they're writing their own form of rite of passage. So it's kind of like, if you in the red pill space, you in the manosphere, you got to do this, this, and this. That's our rite of passage, but it's a negative way. It's not necessarily conducive to do anything besides get laid. Because at the end of the day, this space is comprised about getting laid, but yet they talking shit about women. So how are you, the majority of your content, the majority of your income is generated on bashing women, but on the flip side of that, you want to bang them out. So there's a vacancy there. And I always talk about this with my business partners. There's a big vacancy in this space where we could talk about, I mean, I could get ratchet too, but there's a time and place for that shit. There's a lot of niggas outside that don't know about themselves. And for me, like I said, I want to build the man up. Now, on my channel, I'm not going to cap here. On my channel, I expose shit that chicks do, but I also expose shit that niggas do too. Let's not get it twisted. We all can get it. It is what it is, right? But at the end of the day, for me, I think we need more content that's going to bring somebody up without having to tear somebody down. Because men today need so much work. We ain't got time to worry about what the broad is doing. A lot of you guys want to figure out what makes a woman tick, but you don't know what the hell makes you tick. Right. But yet you want the broad to understand you and respect you and call you king and make you dinner. But yet, nigga, you don't even know what you're doing. So it's all backwards, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because me as a heterosexual woman, when I watch these men behaving the way they do, I get confused, right? Because in my mind, I automatically go to homosexuality, because I'm like, there's no way, and they think it's an insult, right? But I'm just like, you know, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, I've been taught it's a duck. So when I hear these men continuously bashing women the way they do, not just talking about, well, I don't like when women do X, Y, and Z. I mean, vitriolic, okay? Yeah. Bashing. I'm like, well, maybe you don't even like women. Maybe you need to figure out what makes you tick. Maybe you don't like them sexually, but like you said, you want to bash them and smash them. You have to pick a side. I don't know what it is you want. Like, you're just some hysterical man on a panel yelling about women or what happened to you. And it's confusing to me. I'm like, is this even a straight man that I'm trying to have a debate with about gender roles? Why am I even having this debate? This man may not even like, you know what I mean? What I'm coming with, right? I'm going to open up, Ish, you can go ahead, please, if you want to have something to add. And I'm going to open up the panel. I am opening up the panel since our gentlemen, Mr. O and Big Half, are gone. What's up, Lucky? I see you. Mrs. Married, how are you, beautiful? I'm opening up the panel, so Ish, go on ahead, and I'm gonna bring some people up.
You know, again, we're just affirming that you know, there is a sense of a lack of self that's existing in this whole process, and you know, when again you're seeing these individuals. Again, what is a man's role in knowing and playing your role? If you can stand firm on that perspective, and any time that you find that you're running into conflict with your partner, you're somewhere you're deficient in your role. Either you're not providing, either you're not protecting, either you're not securing somehow some area. There's a failure, and generally you'll find that the woman will tell you, and you can't dictate someone's emotional response. Yeah. You can't dictate how they express themselves, and you can't be offended. This is something that I've learned. You can't be offended if they're expressing themselves a certain way. It's if you're in your highest mind, you're assessing the level of impact of what you're doing is based upon their response and reaction. So a lot of times what I've learned about femininity and womanhood and women is that tears don't always denote weakness or sadness. Tears are a peak meter. So if a woman is happy, she'll cry happy. If she's sad and she's very deeply saddened, she'll cry. If she's angry, she'll cry. That's a peak meter. She's redlining right now. So you have to assess and analyze and understand your counterpart. And this is where we make errors, is because we try to point fault at a woman for being who she is, and then we don't look at ourselves in this process and say, okay, let me understand what's going on. Let me make an assessment, and that's what we're supposed to do as men, and determine, okay, this is what's going on here. Okay, and that's why we don't have the same types of emotions, and then we it's difficult to be a man.
Facts.
It's not easy.
Yo,
It's heavy. You have to go in. Okay, if it stinks, you got to go clear out the stinky smell. If it's heavy, you have to lift it up. If it's dangerous, you have to step in and aggressively move forward in that process. That's your role. And if you're not comfortable in accepting your role, that's where you start to have problems, and you come into this jealousy and envy. Well, she just gets to do this, and she just gets to. That's who she is.
Yo, Ish, you killed it, bro. You said something important. I think it will be a nice thing for us to segue into as well. In regards to real men, conflict. How do you handle conflict within your relationship? That's a big one, bro. Because typically, in my experience and from what I know, women sometimes have a tendency to live comparatively, and they have a tendency to voice out their frustrations in their relationships, to their toxic single friends, their mothers, their family members, etc. And that's something you can't necessarily control. But as a man, in my viewpoint, a real man, not all, I know, not all, some, right, no doubt, but in my viewpoint, I think it's very important to be able to handle conflict privately, right, and in unison, right? Because people, and this is the problem with this goddamn community, a lot of guys don't know how to handle their own relationships. They're worried about someone else's lawn as opposed to cutting their own lawn. So now they pay dues, they get coaching and shit. I'm not against coaching, but they pay super chats and all this shit to find out generic advice on how to handle a relationship that isn't that bad. All you have to do is accept your role, like Ish said. So now men have to pick a side. They don't want to assume the roles, right? They don't want to assume their roles. And again, to be quite honest with you, I have a show that says most, not all, most women don't want a high value man because it's a lot of work to deal with the high value man. It's like if you got a luxury car, Benz and all that shit, you got to do a lot of put the premium gas and all the servicing. Most women don't want to do that. They want to do, if you give a woman and she's comfortable in her role while being with you, let her master that. Now, if she's mastered that, she got time on her hands and she want to learn how to do some other shit that you can teach her, fine. Because in my view, women don't necessarily want an equal. They want a teacher, right? A teacher to kind of teach them things, to kind of make them better. And in turn, the woman will teach them things as well. But guys don't want to accept their roles. They want to be able to just say that they can do it, but not do it. And then when the woman again steps up to the plate, they're bitter and envious. Who's got time? Like it said, it's hard to be a man. It's hard to be a woman. Now, on these panels and shit, niggas are talking about how they want their woman to be. And then on other panels, they talk about how they want their men to be. It's hard for us to master that in itself. So when do you have time to worry about what she's doing when you're not mastering what you're supposed to be doing? So
I'm about to, ladies, am I alone? I'm about to throw my bra up there. I'm like, we teaching tonight. We are teaching tonight. And that's why I wanted to have this panel so badly. So many points that I'm just like agreeing with. Ish. Something that you touched on, man. I know I am a woman. When I start feeling like I'm stepping into a man's shoes, I become so resentful. I become so resentful because I am that woman that tells you where you are lacking. Like, look, I need this. I'm feeling a certain way. I feel like I'm stepping up too much. I feel like I'm opening up my purse too much. And I have to agree with you, AV. It's easier to just have a man that we can master, that we're comfortable with, who we're learning from. That is the natural order of things. I don't understand why people are so rebellious to the natural order of things, but I find that it's those people that can't even do the basics in life. They just don't do life well. And we have to realize that some people just don't do life well. Because I know I am that person. I'm like, I've done the high value dating. It is a headache.
It's a headache, right?
You have a guy who's, you know, in the 8-9 figure tax bracket, who's always dealing with a lot of women and cars and an entourage, and it's a headache.
Yeah.
It's a headache. It looks glamorous, but I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, those women are miserable. Because I spent about a year in that situation. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to go any further. This is not for me. Right. But the average, you know, some women will stay no matter what they're going through because they want that Gucci. Right. And I'm materialistic, so you couldn't get me that way, right? But it's so true. I just want simple life, stability. I don't want to have to be the man. I want to be the woman. I like being a girl, right? So once I start stepping into that role and my masculine starts growing within the relationship, I start seeing you as less and less.
Yes, that is a big one. And that's a flag that a lot of people overlook. What Jen said is so important. You know, because again, we always talk about in the space when a relationship dissolves, it's been over 6 months prior to you actually finding out about it. Yeah. So if Jen had to go on her personal a little too much, she had to cover this time. We couldn't go out we couldn't celebrate our anniversary because you were going through some shit. She's gonna start to resent you. Now, it doesn't make her materialistic, right? But what she signed up for, right? What you led with, perhaps your wallet or this whole notion about masculinity, you're gonna hold shit down. Sometimes, listen, now let's not get it twisted. Even when you hold the shit down, your ride or die is supposed to support you and ride with you. So now if Jen had to go into her person, she's looking at you some type of way, there's a way to make it up to her. And it's not necessarily monetarily, it's just something else. But men have to learn how to listen, just to listen as opposed to listen to respond. That's a female thing. A lot of women listen to respond. They didn't even hear what I said, but they already got a rebuttal and shit.
So we already got something waiting. We like, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah. Let me, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, man, you can't blame a woman for wanting more or for being frustrated. Like if a woman's ridden with you through thick and thin and it just didn't work out, you have to thank her for riding with you through thick and thin, bro. Because at the end of the day, she doesn't have to be there. So anybody in this day and age that wants to stay with you and believes in you during the rough and the bad time, that's somebody that deserves a reward. Your presence, whatever your grind is, she's going to get that reward and that lifestyle that you promised her. But at the same time, if she wants more, you have to let her go. You can't be mad at her for that. You know what I mean? At the same time as well, men have to continue to focus on themselves. So in the event that occurs, you can bounce back and pivot easier. Nothing is in the flesh is forever. We got to be realistic. How old are we? Like, again, everybody looking at the movies and shit, acting like we soulmates and all this shit. That's not necessarily a reality. As you get older, love is not necessarily the incentive anymore. When we were younger, after a couple of heartbreaks, we like, okay, it's not necessarily I love him, but I'm not in love with him. You know how many people that are not with the people that they are in love with, bro? So at the end of the day, man, you got to know what's important for you. And then work towards that. That's what's going to help you be with somebody, because in my view, we're better together than apart. But again, everybody got to play their role. If they're not playing their role, you're going to have cats, I'm going to have dogs, and we just going to be right. Because it's like men rather be right and alone. Women rather be right than happy. So it's like, it's ridiculous in my view.
So I want to do a super chat break, and then I want to bring up some ladies. Ladies, if you'd like to join us, you're more than welcome. Haran DeMarco, thank you so much for the super chat. Haran DeMarco says, the only currency that matters is results. Men keep score. You are your actions. You are your reputation. Now, you did say something, AV, that it's like the plague to me. That ride or die, those words are like, ew, somebody take this.
Right.
Your ride or die, like, right? It's just because of like residual, you know what I mean, memories.
Yeah, for sure.
Of when I rode and I died and I had to, they had to bring me back.
Yeah, bring you back.
In relationship to the ride or die state phrase, and I brought this up before, you know, ride or die is in gang culture, in West Coast gang culture, where that came from, is actually a suicide mission. We're gonna ride or die. So you're going in on a suicide mission. You're not guaranteed that, and it's making it clear this is not a guaranteed outcome over here. You know, this is not we're gonna ride and end up in wealth. We're gonna ride and conquer. No, you're gonna ride or die. So it's a roll of a dice scenario, and that's exactly where it comes from. Because if you jump in a car, 4 or 5 people, you all have guns, you're going to either get arrested, you're going to get shot at, and you may not come out alive going into a rival neighborhood. Beyond all that, the one point that you were talking about earlier is that the thing that I had to learn and evolve and grow into was I had to learn that and make the honest determination of whether or not I was ready for a woman. Did I have what it took to invite another life into my life? Is my life confusing, conflicted, up and down? Am I being chased with evictions? Am I check to check? What am I bringing her into? And so within our program in the nation, because marriage is pushed. It's pushed aggressively because we shun against fornication and adultery and all those things, and we try to have successful families. And the basis for a solid community is solid families, and solid families build great communities, which build greater nations. So our intention is to establish a greater nation. But what in our process, in our protocols, you can't just walk up to a sister in the nation and be like, "Oh, I want her. She's cute." You have to go to another man and ask to court her. He then investigates you and present all your paperwork, taxes, your point of employment. Do you have a home? Where are you going to be bringing her if you decide to, if the courtship turns into a marriage? Like, all these things are placed way before you even have an opportunity to sit down with her. And then the sister that is responsible for the sisters on their side privately says, "Brother such and such is interested in you." She has the private opportunity to make a long distance observation, and she may be doing it anyway, and say, "Nah, not brother, no." You know what I'm saying? Or, "I'm interested in learning more about brother." And then there's a process, and that's old school, yes, but it's old school and it has its successes, because within a courtship, you're able to determine and find something out, or find your red flags early. Clearly, early, you can say, okay, before intimacy gets involved, before hand holding, kissing, and sex, because once you start delving into that realm, you are now driving drunk. You're under the influence of intimacy and the need and the desire for companionship. And that's where a lot of times we make errors in our relationships between male and female. So it is something, that made me look into myself, because now I got to go to Brother Captain, like, Brother Cap, I want to court sister such and such. "Oh, really, brother? Do you have a car? Do you have a house?"
That's why it's important too.
Last time I looked at your charity receipts, it was only $5 on your charity receipt, brother. So you might not be in the economic position to take on sister who works at H&R, some corporation or something, and then you have to seek for something like, well, maybe I'm not, and you have the desire, you have the need. That's nature. But then
let me walk. All right, go ahead.
What you have to determine is you need to get busy to address your nature. You want a woman, then you need to get the things that require you to have the right woman, or you're gonna run into low-hanging fruit, or, like they say, fruit on the ground.
Well, on that note, I'd like to welcome the lovely ladies, Annalicia and Jada LaRue. I love that name. I love saying that name.
I'm Jada. That's Annalicia, right?
Yeah. Wait,
Okay.
Yeah, I can't. Right.
Yeah. Because I waved at first thinking I was going to be first for some reason. So sorry. So
Yeah.
Anna and then Jada.
And then Reese from Philly. Juana Chica, come up here, darling. Come up here if you're not busy. So the topic tonight, ladies, is a real man. Let's ask the men. I've been asking the men to define masculinity and what a real man is. We can just tell them what we like to see in a man. Ultimately, it's up to them to deliver such. Ish, going back to what you said, it's so important because I stress to people, even women, are you ready for a relationship? Are you ready for a relationship? What it's going to entail, what you need to be, who you need to be. Are you ready? But as you know, even though AV said, how old are we? A lot of us still thinking with our organs, right? So, you know, she's pretty, he's cute, okay. And then what happens is relationship progresses, and then it's like, this was your condition? Wait a minute now. I didn't sign up for this, but you kind of did because you didn't take the time. So I think it's a beautiful thing that you know, how the nation goes about it is it's deep. So welcome Annalicia, Jada LaRue, and Reese from Philly. What would you like to add?
Asking me?
No, ladies first. What do you think this is?
You know what? I am okay with a man going first because he is, they are the topic. So I am okay with him going first. It's okay by me.
Oh, that's nice.
Plus
Okay,
I'm
Annalicia.
old and I'm going to get tired fast.
Annalicia, you cool with that?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, go ahead, Reese. What you got for us on today? What is a real man? I'm asking the men.
So I don't think there's an absolute definition. If you ask 100 men, you're going to get 100 different descriptions, right? But I feel like the best way for a man to go out into the world is before he comes out the front door, you have to bottle up all your bullshit, and you know you have it with you, all of us do. Everybody's been through a lot of shit. You bottle it all up, and you put it way back in the freezer, the cold part. Then you go outside so that your bullshit doesn't come with you. And that doesn't matter where you're going, whether you're going to see a woman, your children, boss, you're going to play ball no matter what. You can't bring your nonsense with you. You see what I'm saying? You have to be man enough to curb it. I have horrible feelings sometimes and bad intentions, but I understand that, you know, the Christians call it free will. I know what I have is self-control. Every man has it. You see what I'm saying? And you have to practice it and use it. It's that simple. And I don't really have a lot of dating advice, even though I'm old. I have almost zero experience in dating. But I noticed that when I do meet women, in 7 days or less, I clearly know what this woman is about and who she is. Now, if you're going to go forward with her, you're going to have to open up your ears once in a while. You see what I'm saying? It's not a relationship, is not a one-sided thing. And every relationship that I've observed, you know, where one tries to dominate the other, it goes south and usually pretty fast. You know what I'm saying? So I'm on the outside looking in. Sometimes I'll see things that y'all don't. You know what I mean? I've been doing this for half a century, and just people are going into the situations the wrong way. I broke that down to y'all before. But as far as the men go, man, sometimes you have to lend your ear and just listen, because like I said in the last live stream, it was a couple times when Annalicia was going off and I was thinking to myself, what the fuck is she talking about? And then when she was finishing when she gets to the end of her statement, then you get the context of what she was saying. You understand what I'm saying? So you can't half listen. You see what I'm saying? There has to be some mutual understanding. And that's all I got for that.
I wanted to it's a great point. I wanted to throw it back to Brother Ish if he can still hear me and come back. Something that Reese said, something that I did notice about you that I thought was really admirable and interesting, and I haven't seen men do it, but I don't know if it's a nation thing. I don't know if it's a Nation of Islam thing or FOI thing. Really quickly, the mighty FOI. Shout out to the FOI. There's something that you do where I've corrected you, and what do you answer? What do you say?
Yes, ma'am.
That is what he says when I correct him. And it's funny because it's from not a place of I know better than you, or I'm stronger than you, or I'm smarter than you. It's from I saw that it was not right. This is why it was not right. And the answer is
yes, ma'am.
And it's a beautiful thing. And let me tell you why, because it's a man, in my opinion, I feel like he's accepting my role as a woman and my vision that he doesn't have. We have different skills, right? So it's like the same way if he was to say something to me and I'm like, got it. I'm not a man. I don't know what you guys are seeing. I don't know what you guys are thinking. And I think when we accept that we are different and we benefit each other, we do better. Because like AV said, we are better together. Now, don't get me wrong. I like being alone, but we are better together. And I always thought, I was always impressed by that, where another man would be combative with me and then it frustrates me. And then I'm like, okay, you don't want to listen? Cool with me. And then that turns into something else. So it's like you have to pick your battles, right? You have to pick your battles, and you have to know that if you're choosing to be with somebody, they are not the enemy. And if you ever feel that way, you're not in the right relationship.
What I've learned in what you're talking about in the book I said, Man of Steel and Velvet, is complementary partnership. And that's where, what we should be looking for in our relationship choices. And if you are striving to be a certain type of individual, and I'm striving for righteousness and to be a man of truth and conviction, fruit is the best. He's constantly training and conditioning himself to meet and overcome all obstacles in his path. His sole purpose is to deliver the 17 million dead. So with those principles that I have in front of me, if my counterpart steps in and says, "Hey, you're wrong here," it's not for me to stand and defend myself in being wrong. It's to first take an analysis. Am I actually wrong? Let me listen to what's being stated here and do a self-review. Seek fault in self before you seek it in others. Not defend right at all costs. Like that. That's where that's where we make errors as males and as men. Is that we striving to just be right for right's sake, but that's not true leadership. And leadership is service. So if you're now, when you're talking about leadership is service, and you're talking about, I'm the head of the household, that's a service position. You're serving your family. You're serving your family by, providing them a safe shelter and a good home and protection and healthy and decent food, clothing, like that's a service position. And that's what we have to, as men, understand. We're not there to be served. We're here to serve our families. And that when I came into that understanding, and when I look at even again just as a point of reference, I've had the opportunity to observe Minister Farrakhan in private scenarios, and watching and spoken to his family and his children and different things. But I've observed, like even in an interview scenario, where he's sitting and he's being interviewed and his wife is sitting across from him, and as he's answering a question, I noticed that he kept looking at her, and then she would give an acknowledgement like, "That's good, baby. You did good right there." And you think somebody who's been teaching for 40 some odd years but he purposely had her seated where she was sitting. It wasn't that, she just happened to be there. And his chief consultant and counselor was his wife. Man that, leads the charge over thousands to millions of men. And, he looks still at this late age to his wife as his chief conciliare or his consultant. So that shifted my perspective on things. It's not a position of domination and of control. That's that when you're. He said in a lecture of how to mend a broken heart, that when you have a problem with your relationship as a man, you have to increase your majesty. It's not you have to do something to her. You have to grow. You have to improve yourself. You have to go in and look at that. So again, there's bits and pieces, all these different things I've culminated. So it's not, it's not me. I don't want to take any credit for any of this information. It's a culmination of study, research, because what I learned, what I experienced in my personal life is that when I turned 12, me and my father started having conflicts. What I began to recognize and understand was his father died when he was 12. So his point of reference stopped at that year. And from that point, you know, he was winging it to some degree, you know? And so then watching through the years as I'm evolving as a young boy and teen into manhood, and I'm trying to test my boundaries and, you know, am I bad enough? Am I, you know, shadow boxing with, you know, other people? You know, I then started trying to, you know, test myself against the one individual in my life that is the dominant dog in the room, which is my father. Now, I learned very quickly that I was not equipped. And, you know, I experienced an MMA moment where I was flipped up and spun around. But that was a life lesson for me. But it was also for him, too, because, again, he didn't have his father at this age. So we went through a real rough period of time. Hold on, that's my child. Give me a second.
All right, well, I'll do a super chat break really quick. Tristan Draper, thank you so much for the super chat. Tristan says, all I'm saying is this simp has been validated as a man. Let us all follow the doctrine of the simp, for it is the way of masculinity and has been scientifically proven based off this panel. Book of Simp coming out soon. Don't we all love Tristan?
Let me say this real quick.
Let me bring up Juana first, AV.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, Juana.
Hey, y'all. What's up?
Are you loving this panel? Are you loving this panel?
I'm enjoying this conversation.
It's healing. Isn't it healing? We needed some healing this week, I think, in the YouTube stream. We needed some healing.
Is it healing, though, Jen? You know, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical, Jen.
Have you seen what's going on in these streets?
Yes, I have. That's probably why I'm skeptical. I'm like, they're too good to be true.
AV, what did you
so there was a lot to unpack, but basically, you know, in regards to apologizing, you know, I always tell guys to trust their eyes, not their ears. Now, a lot of women, in my view, in my experiences, have a hard time apologizing, right? So with that said, if you know women, typically, you know, I can count on one hand how many times my mother has apologized to me. Now, I'm not saying all, but in my experience, I've realized that a lot of women have a tendency to be reluctant to apologize, right? And are encouraging men to apologize first. So a lot of times, men really need to pay attention to their ladies in regard to, because sometimes a woman can be stubborn and not want to apologize, but her actions can be reflective of an apology. That's number one. Number two, in today's day and age, yes, leadership is servitude, is a service. Unfortunately, women are not being taught how to appreciate that servitude. They are taking that service that we are encouraged to do, like Brother Ish said, as entitlement. And that's the problem, because now if I'm a leader and I'm supposed to eat last and shit, I'm supposed to do all this shit, fine. Let me embrace my role. But in my viewpoint as a woman, I think appreciating that servitude is also necessary to encourage me and to incentivize me to continuously embrace that portion of my role. So it's a give and take. So now, if you don't see it as service and you see it as entitlement, cool. You're not for me. But this is where we come into vetting. The nation helps you vet a potential partner. But for those of us who are not in the nation, this is why men have to vet women properly. This is why women have to vet men properly. You know what I mean? Nowadays, sex is easy. That's 1, 2, 3. That's not vetting. For me, I think men and women at any age should be with each other for at least 4 seasons to see adversity, to see up and down, to see if this is somebody that you can actually build something with. Things have changed significantly, but at the end of the day, man, you know, people feel entitled to certain things, whether it was trauma from your mama, trauma from the last relationship that you made a poor decision on, etc. A lot of women feel that because they made poor decisions initially without vetting a man properly, that carries over into the next relationship. And then that's that baggage that we were talking about earlier. So everybody needs to get their shit together. Everyone needs to furnish their own life, mentally, spiritually, physically, etc. So that way you can invite somebody over. You know what I mean? And then that way you guys can build together, and then you guys can bring something together. That's how I see it, because it's going to be a hamster wheel. I did this, you did that. It's never going to go anywhere. And then we're going to try to apply shit to different people. And before you know, you're old and you're not even going to be interested in being with anybody. You're going to actually prefer to be by yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. But most of these people want relationships. They want to be with somebody besides smashing. Y'all can't even be compatible. Y'all too alpha to be able to listen to a woman. Y'all too alpha to be with somebody because you scared that your colleagues or your friends or your subscribers will call you a simp. So everybody needs to lay off YouTube for a little bit, do a digital detox and shit, and really look at themselves, because at the end of the day, most people are capping, because when this shit goes off, they're going on Tinder, they're doing all this other silly shit. You don't know, man. Like I said, I'm new to this content creator space, and I don't want to clown my subs, but like the questions that these dudes still ask, and I'm like, bro, it's bigger than that. Masculinity is bigger than the dating apps. It's bigger than that. And you guys want to cheer on these other dudes that are renting cars in Miami, but yet you trying to listen to that playbook and you can't even pretend to be like this person. You ain't got your credit up. You ain't got nothing up. So you acting like you living vicariously through a cyber person. That's your cyber daddy, like Jen said. It's just too much.
Bliss me has some word. Well, hold on, super chat break. Bliss me has some words for Tristan. She says Tristan is a hater. That man is everything. Okay, Tristan. And Alicia, you were saying.
No, this is a good conversation, but and I'm sitting back and I'm really listening. I'm trying to absorb the information and condense it and retain it, because it's good information. It's good insight. The one thing that I would like to contribute, and this is obviously from the perspective of a woman, and it would be on the outside looking in, obviously being heterosexual and having dealt with men in my life. But I think that today's men have taken this could have been something that's always been. I shouldn't say today, but that emotional component with men, and it's not that you have to be overly emotional, but it's the capacity to process and understand emotion, your own sometimes. I think that piece is really missing from men. And what I think is because a lot of men in these spaces and a lot of, unfortunately, Black men in the community, they haven't been taught the role of a man, the role of a husband, the role of a father.
Right.
So things like masculinity, things like being an alpha male, they take these things and every relationship is predicated on these functions, right? Their ability to listen is predicated on, being alpha trumps their ability to listen, their ability to be introspective, their ability to connect with people. It's like it's alpha or nothing. It's masculinity or nothing, because they haven't had that model in life that says no, vulnerability can be masculine, right? Like they are missing that piece. And interpersonally and romantically in relationships, it's detrimental, right? Because I think I heard someone say women want to be right. In my estimation, I'm not going to talk about studies, although I've seen them, but in my estimation, I feel that women really want to we like to resolve. Like we like to have a meeting of the mind. We like to, it's not about being right. Maybe in the earlier stages, right? Maybe in your early 20s, you hold on to being right and it's important for you. But as you get older, you realize what's important, and what's important is let's come to a consensus and let's move forward. That's like every woman that I know, that I've ever known, has been that way as they mature and they're in, serious and more functional relationships. I think that men in these spaces, they're unable to come to some sort of middle ground with women, especially when it comes to conflict, because of the need to be alpha, because of the need to seem or to be perceived as masculine. So I think that alpha and masculine, when I hear these words, I'm gone. Like, I'm gone. And the women that I know, they're like, you're alpha, you're masculine. Like, is that all there is to you? Because we're, you know, that's one dimensional. We want, you know, we want multi-dimensional, fully formed, mature, introspective, emotionally aware, stoic men. If you tell me you're like, I run when I hear those things, but that's what I want to say.
First of all, I love that point, and I have to co-sign because I am big on resolve. I don't even want to be right anymore, but I'm a lot older than a lot of the other ladies, but I'm about resolve. What's the problem? How are we going to fix it so we can go on and I can cook this chicken? What is the resolve? Something I'm not understanding. I'm like, I'm trying to explain this to you so I can get to a resolve so we can move forward. But you're absolutely right. I got a cosign. In my 20s, I was like, I'm right. I don't care what happened. I'm right because I'm saying I'm right, but it's true. And I love that point about outside of being male, outside of being alpha, we do want a well-rounded man. Okay, you are male. You can chop down a tree and you can push a car. Like my daddy could. My daddy could push a car. But I'm like, outside of that, what can you do? Are you going to cry with me when we're watching The Notebook? Because I want to cry with you when we're watching The Notebook.
Right? You do? You do? Okay.
I do. I love The Notebook. With that said.
What can I say this though, Jen? Do you think also if you date certain men that they always think it's some sort of competition and therefore assume that it's like somebody's got to be right and wrong in the conversation? Because I've experienced where it's like we're having a conversation and I'm really just looking to resolve the issue, but for some reason, because I have a feeling about the situation that I won't like deviate from, men view it as a competition. Sometimes they just see conflict as a competition. And I don't know if it's just your nature as men to see things as competition when really, or maybe perceive it as like we're about to argue, right? And so they automatically assume it's going to do that. So I've experienced that in my, like when I was younger. Like you said, now it's like, I just want to know what's the resolution and what, like you said, can I cook this chicken right now?
Can I respond to that?
Real quick, I want to welcome someone to the panel. Glenn Lawrence is with us. Hello, Glenn. How are you?
What's going on, everybody? What's the good, AV?
Hello.
Hey, Jen.
Welcome to On the Block with Jen. Thank you for pulling up. And before we answer you, Juana, because that is a great question, I want to do a super chat break. Thank you so much, Bliss Me. She says, I owe Tristan an apology. He was calling himself a simp. My bad. Let me just say something, okay, since we throw around accountability. Bliss Me, okay, clap back at Tristan, thought he was saying something else, okay? She super chatted for that. And then she super chatted to apologize. Do you see my ladies? Do you see the ladies that pull up to On the Block with Jen? Okay, continue.
So, Juana, if I can answer your question briefly, just from my perspective, my experience, there are moments in the male-female interaction where, as men, we may not have the answer. We may not even know. And you have to be, when you grow into a certain level of maturity where you can say, I don't know. In going through my self-development, there was a lot that I didn't know on finances. My father worked a 9-to-5. I saw that he was very unhappy in his 9-to-5. He worked for the post office. And I wanted to go, and it made me want to go an opposite direction without having any guidance or doing the proper research. And this is prior to me going into the nation or anything. So, I went into hustling and street hustling and, selling crack and hustling credit cards and all these different things to try to get out of an economic rut. But I never really understood how to make money. And so when you run into circumstances that you're not equipped for, as men, we fall into, what we lean on our strengths. I'm gonna be strong and be tough. No, woman, you just deal with this. We gonna eat McDonald's tonight. That's what we gonna have. Not we don't have enough money to have a real meal or a healthy meal or, whatsoever, go out to dinner or whatever. We hide, from, the frailties and not lean to a partnership for, support or understanding in that dynamic. And, and then other times we lean too hard, and we're too busy lamenting on, I need this one. Come on, I need you to be my struggle buddy. Help me out, because this is hard and this is rough, and I need you to ride or die with me on this suicide mission. Like that is that is us not finding where our strengths are, being honest enough to say we're not equipped for this scenario right now, and going out and doing the work. And sometimes you have women who are more developed than their partners, who then say, hey, look, baby, why don't you go over here and check this out? Or why don't you go try to get a job? Or why don't you go check out, I just talked to such and such, and give him a call. And they've helped these men evolve and become better. But that's the exception, not the rule. And that's what we have to understand. You have moments that there are exceptions, but it should not be the rule. If we're going to strive to be men and to be leaders and to be head of the household, every physical body has a head. Your arm does not rule your entire body. Your head does. So that means that you have to be equipped in your mind, your manhood, man covering. You have to be informed, educated, have an understanding of finances, have an understanding of how to take care of children. Like when and I've delivered or been in the delivery process with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children. Okay? Some that weren't my children, but I saw a sister who was in a situation who did not have someone there for her. Didn't want anything. We weren't intimate, nothing else. She was just in a position where she didn't know to go to a doctor, to have these different appointments, to go through this whole process. And I aided her through the journey. And that was because of things that I learned in the relationship to process, but I also knew that there's no reason why women should go through that experience alone. But I also went through a course of study. Now, what that inspired, and that was inspired based upon, me being, like my brother Captain of the Nation was like, brother, you go everywhere the baby goes, you do, like he grilled into me certain principles, which then made me go study, which then I went studying Lamaze and the Bradley method and all these different birthing technologies, because what I learned in that process is that if you, for lack of a better statement, if you place that child there, you're responsible for that child.
So I want to say something to thank you, Ish. I want to respond to Juana's question. I have my own theories for that. I think that men feel like if they agree with you, they're deemed as weak, especially in these spaces, right? Even if you're right, quote unquote right, whatever right is, or even if you're making more sense, they feel like I can't agree with her in public because, I'm a man's man and, I'm a guy. So I don't want to seem weak to agree with this woman that's obviously more intellectual or smarter or just more well-versed in that, my category. They will not bend, right? Another thing is we're in the age of like, no one remembers that it's okay to agree to disagree. There are many people I respect, you two included, you and Juana and Annalicia, I have a lot of dialogue with, and sometimes we don't agree. And it's like, okay, well, that's not how I saw it, and it's cool. And we have respect for each other that way. But I think sometimes men feel like if you don't agree with them, it is a sign of disrespect some way, somehow. And it's just like, no, I don't agree with you. And we have to agree to disagree, because sometimes you will never see the point of view of the other person. And I think especially in these spaces, men take it as an insult. Like, shut up, woman, you must agree. Really quickly before someone jumps in, Rush, I see you backstage. I want to know what on earth made you think after looking at the people on this panel that you would fit here. Have a good day, sir. Okay, so who wants to add to that?
Can I add to that?
Go ahead. You go first.
Oh, thank you. What I wanted to add is I think it's interesting. Like relationships are so interesting to me because I feel like humans are interesting. We're so complex. So you take two complex people, the relationship is going to be dynamic no matter what. Even the most boring people are. It's going to be dynamic. And what I think is people need to realize, and we're talking about men specifically, your brain is a use dependent organ, right? So the more you do something, the better you're going to become at it. And this includes conflict resolution, this includes communication, this includes introspection, this includes, you know, all of these interpersonal qualities that really human adults truly need to navigate in and out of every space, whether it's, you know, the business space, the, you know, you need these skills, and you can only truly build them up if you're using them consciously and actively every single day. And I find with men that someone said it earlier, there's a sense of arrested development, right? It's like conflict and you see this, this bears out in studies where conflict resolution for them might be, I need to have the last word. Or you see a lot of men have a propensity to shut down just because the skills aren't there, the tools are not there because they've spent so much of their time shutting down, right? They haven't mastered their emotions, they haven't mastered their output, they haven't mastered conflict or being able to disagree with someone in a constructive manner. So I think that men really need to understand that it's okay if you don't yet have these skills, because and men don't like to hear this either, but I feel that therapy is paramount when you're trying to build yourself up as a human being, because if you spend a long time without mastering and sharpening these skills, you're not going to get the results that you want to see, not just romantically but interpersonally. But the people that you work with are not going to want to be around you, right? Your supervisors or people who work under you, they're not going to want to be around you. You can only fool people for so long, right? This is what we tend to see. So I think that it's important for you to really use that emotional brain, right? Flex the muscle. Really, it's use dependent. You need, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And if you don't have the skills, seek therapy, because they give you the tool belt. And when you need the wrench, or when you need conflict resolution, you pull it out of the tool belt, and you're a better human being for it. You're a better partner for it. You're a better father for it. You see these things, and it's intersectional, so it crosses all relationships, parenthood, romantic, like in the workplace. So I wish that men had this understanding more, because it's not about being right. It's not about being alpha. It's not about always being strong. And a lot of men perceive strength as, I'm right, but you can't be wrong and strong. Like, that's my thing.
This is so right.
I think the young lady that came
So
in with
right.
Annalisa never had a chance to speak either.
Above me,
Jada
right?
LaRue and Glenn Lawrence, who would like to go first? Real
Yeah,
men.
Jada.
Jada, you mean?
Real men.
Hello, how are you guys doing today? Hello.
Hey, Jada.
Oh my goodness, exactly as they said it, I had just hit enter. I have to go somewhere else, but I totally love the common sense that's going on over here. The fellas, listen, I run across a lot of great talking outside of YouTube. Sometimes it's hard to find it onto YouTube. So shout out to the fellas who are on here making great common sense. Whether, you know, we all agree or not, it's the way that we can also disagree without having a whole bussy fit. So shout out to y'all. Shout out to the ladies on the panel. Hey. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I am so sorry that I promised some people I would come over at 11 o'clock. So I was like, I didn't get a chance. The time went by so quick. But yeah, shout out to y'all. Y'all are just making some great sense. If y'all got a YouTube channel, please let me know, because I don't know if Alpha Villains is the YouTube channel or if that's a nickname. I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So I'll check you out. Brother Ish, is that
it.
your YouTube name?
Can't hear you.
You're muted, brother.
I don't currently have a YouTube channel yet, but I'm working on it. I'm growing into that.
He will.
No problem.
Appreciate you.
Look, let me know, because I love what you guys are saying. I enjoy listening to men. I tell people all the time, when men are speaking, I listen. Point of why I was just so quiet. I was taking it all in. I was like, man, I had thoughts, but now I just want to listen. So shout out to y'all, and I am going to go because I hate to be late.
Have a good
Okay.
night.
But I love you guys. Shout out
Take
to
care.
it, and I look forward to the next topic. Jen, love the conversation, Sonny. See you guys. Have a
Good night,
great
Jada.
week. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Yeah, Annalisa, go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying good night to Jada.
Oh, okay. I thought you said.
I think Glenn got some stuff to say too. Glenn, you never.
Yes, Glenn, welcome.
Big Glenn.
What you
Hey,
got?
what's up?
What's up, brother?
What's going on? So there's a few things I took mental note of, and we have to understand that men and women think differently. We already established that we are different in biological sense. Okay, so then the word came out. Someone feeling something different, and you have to understand the male mind. Okay, we process through reason, logic, and then emotion. Emotion is our last process in the way that we filter information. That's why you see guys have a lot of PTSD. Okay, I'm prior military, so I understand this. Is that because in the heat of the moment, when shit's going down, we don't have the opportunity to feel scared or feel sad about what we have to do in current situations. So when we process emotion is the last part of information that we filter through. And to say that, well, we need guys to get more feelings, well, you're asking men in a way to, filter and rewire themselves to think that women do, because women process information through emotion, reason, and logic. Because if you ask a woman, typically, not all women, and I say this typically, is that they'll say, I feel that you are saying this. And that's a feeling. When a guy's talking to another guy, like when me and AV have conversations, it's like, bro, facts is this. You said this. And that's exactly what it is. It's not how you feel. It's like, wondering why we can't expect the other sex to think like the other sex. We have to be willing to understand that we think and respond differently to information, and knowing where that line of communication can actually be bridged. And sometimes that takes patience. That's just one of the things that I wanted to highlight, because I saw that in the conversation and it stuck out to me. It's like, well, that's something really important to understand, that when we process information, it's differently. And when you say, you want a guy to show their emotions, well, men have no problem showing their emotions. The reason why most men don't show their emotions, let's be honest, it's unattractive. Okay. Let's just be real. Ladies, Jen, you said you wanted a guy to cry with you during The Notebook. All right, let's say you're in the movie theater, right? And some dude 4 seats behind you is sobbing, just straight tears, right? You're not going to be like, oh, that is sexy. You're not. You're going to be like, what's wrong with this guy?
I'm gonna clown him. I'm gonna clown him the whole way.
But let's be real. So it's not, we show our emotions, but we only show the emotions that are been more accepted culturally in society. A man being angry is emotion. Him yelling is a sign of that anger. We have deemed certain emotions to be acceptable for men to exhibit publicly. Okay, look at this. When a woman's crying, everybody's looking to see what's wrong. Men are running to her, trying to figure out how they could help, right? To stop the crying. Same thing with the baby. When a baby's crying, everybody's running to the baby. But when a man cries, everybody kind of looks at him like,
yo, you good?
Why don't you have your shit together? Right. What is wrong with you? And it's because for women, it's an unattractive trait. A man crying, if we're in a shootout and a guy's crying in the corner, rocking back and forth like this, you have no respect for him at this point. You're like, I don't see you getting me out of this situation. So let's be a little bit more realistic when we talk about these outbursts or expressions of emotions. A lot of times guys conceal them because it's unattractive in the woman's eye.
Can he get a little?
Can I respond to that?
Can you get a little teary-eyed watching The Notebook?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've never cried during The Notebook, but You throw on the movie My Girl, and I'll start crying. He just wanted to be an astronaut.
Listen, not Notebook, but
Yeah.
have you seen the Manosphere Men though, and how they? I'm sorry, Annalicia.
We're gonna get into that. Let me do a super chat break and go to Annalicia. Haran DeMarco said, "Thank you for the super chat." He says, "This is by far the best panel I've watched. It's great. Everyone sees Anna in a space where there is mutual respect. It's clear past men didn't know how to speak to her. She is a gem." I agree with you 100% because I've been pegged the way Anna has been, and I'm like, no, when men are in the room, I'm a lady. Right?
All right.
Right. And this is what I want to say, because people think that it's like a lack of control, but I really pick and choose, and I can have conversations when when it's sort of weather permitted for me, right? When the environment is conducive to a progressive conversation, I'm there and I'm contributing. But I wanted to say to, I believe it's Glenn, what I wanted to say is, I don't, when we think of emotions, I think men tend to sort of think in a very, very rigid and sort of linear way. Whereas when I think of emotions personally, and some women that I know, empathy is an emotion, compassion is an emotion, right? Like, so we're not looking for men to be sitting around and whining and crying, but we do, men as if you want to be a good father, if you want to be a good husband, if you want to be a good employer, you have to have a base level of compassion and empathy, and that comes from the emotional brain, and I spoke about the brain being a use dependent organ, and again, this is not, logic isn't relegated to one gender, it's relegated to who uses it more. And I know a lot of men who are very emotional, who lack the emotional wherewithal, who have absolutely no emotional regulation or control, and it's because they haven't flexed the muscle, right? And they're in spaces or around people who haven't forced them to flex that muscle. So for them, their mind, their brain has been conditioned or has sort of been socialized to say, hey, you can have these outbursts and it's okay, right? So I don't want us to get into the whole gender thing. The expression of emotion, I think that people have sort of one way of looking at it, and I don't look at it that way. And also when it comes to who's more logical and analytical, who's using that part of their brain more. That's what it truly comes down to. It's not relegated or exclusive to one gender over another. If you're using the analytical part of your brain, it's going to be, the muscle's going to grow, right? That part of the brain's going to grow. That's the reality. When we're talking about emotions, it's not crying. It's not always just, it's not crying. It's not, oh baby. And I agree that the way that men's emotions are perceived, and there may be a negative undertone to it. But when we're talking about romantic relationships, I think that men do need the space, right? And if you're with the person you should be with, someone who understands that, they're going to give you the grace. They're going to give you that space where you can have that, you can be vulnerable. No one's saying you can sit around crying all day. We have things to do, but you do have the space when you're with someone who loves you, who understands you, who has the compassion and the empathy. So I just wanted to say that.
Let me piggyback on that really quickly to kind of piggyback on what Glenn said. Glenn, I think Glenn, if you notice how Glenn said it, it's the order of operations, right? So the first go-to for a man is logic, reason, then emotion. So men do have that emotion capability. We're human, right? So we all have those feelings. And when he referred to women, he says the go-to, the order of operation is what logic and reason will be the tail end. The first go-to will be emotion. Now, I don't know the studies, but in my viewpoint as well, I'd have to agree with Glenn that women are more, their first go-to, their instinctive go-to would be emotion. Now, sometimes when we make emotional decisions, like you mentioned about men that you know that are very emotional, they lack knowledge. They make rash decisions, they make poor decisions, and everyone tends to pay for it. So, when a woman suppresses and uses that part of her brain as far as logic, so she's suppressing something else. She's suppressing her natural instinctive go-to. Now, like you said, it's important for men and women to understand each other, right? So if I understand women, I'm listening to the manosphere, I know what makes women tick. I, in hindsight, have to know in my mindset that women, first go-to is emotions. That can entail yelling, acting crazy. I have to be the opposite. In being logical and embracing my role as a man, I have to be the opposite of her to kind of simmer the shit down and explain shit to her. Now, we also talked about resolution. I've gotten older now. Now it's all about resolving shit. What Jen said is very important. We can agree to disagree, bro, because there's a lot of women that say, I don't want to go to bed angry, but that shit is impossible because we talk until 2 o'clock in the morning. You're trying to make me understand your point, and I just don't agree with your point. So now women tend to have a tendency to say, in my experiences, I want you to understand how important it is for you to see it my way. And sometimes when I say I see it your way, I just don't agree, it could be a problem. So it's all about the order of operation. We got to pick and choose our battles. So if my first go-to is to be logical, I may have to pick my battle and go through the emotional side first so I can kind of simmer your ass down because I know that's what you're expecting from me. In long-term relationships, it's give and take, bro. It's not going to be a certain one size fits all. Because like I said, when the mic comes off, a lot of these niggas are capping. They do other things that are the antithesis of what the message that they're spreading. So at the end of the day,
Can I push back?
Absolutely. Give me 1 second. In your viewpoint,
Sorry.
this is probably how you run your relationship, which is fine. I kind of co-sign what Glenn says. For me, I have a tendency to be a little bit more logical. Now, I'm open to a woman correcting me and showing me that she's more logical. She has a point to make that I maybe overlooked. I'm open to that. But I find it that women are not as open as men are because it's like because we're men, we have to be more open. It's kind of like Jen says she's an atheist. So I find that atheists are more respectful for people who have faith, but people who have faith are not as respectful to the atheists or pro-vaxxers versus vaxxers, anti-vaxxers. The anti-vaxxers are more respectful. If you want to take the poke, take the poke. But the pokers are looking at the anti-vaxxers like they're crazy. So there's a big disconnect. So the whole agreeing to disagree requires logic from men that typically, because for me, if you don't you don't agree with me, fine, it's all good. I'm going to bed. But I find that women have a harder time to do that because, in my view, they'd rather be right than happy. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to push back.
Wait, really quickly, because that's a little spicy.
Yeah, that's spicy.
Let's go.
Tristan Draper, thank you for the super chat, my love. He says, at Heron DeMarco, there's only one Annalicia simp in the streets. That is him. That's Tristan.
Can I say, listen, I love Heron. Heron, if you can hear me, I love you. And I appreciate you advocating on behalf of people who are misunderstood. I really appreciate it. I see you and I acknowledge you. So I just want to thank him for that. But to push back, because we're gonna have some pushback. So I think that people tend to forget, or maybe they don't know. So the brain is something that I'm well versed in neurology. I'm well versed in, that's my thing. But I think that we tend to forget how plastic and malleable the brain is. So when you're describing the order of things, or the idea that predetermined and hardwired differences are just who men and women are, that's not scientifically true, right? That's not objectively true. If it may be for you anecdotally true, but it's not in reality. The statistics don't bear out, and that's not even the way that the brain works, right? It really just depends on the environment. It depends on what part of the brain the person is using the most, because the order of things can change depending on what you're using the most. Like that, right. That's the way that it's an organ that is literally based on what are you using. And I also have to say, so if we know that the brain is malleable, it's plastic, it can change, then that means that these predetermined orders or hardwired differences in the brain, they can change throughout the course of one's life at different stages and different times. But I also think that women, see, you're looking at it from your perspective. I'm sort of generalizing it more and looking at statistics. But I don't think that, I think that it's not logic. I don't think that's the reason that people in general are not, you have to be willing. You have to be willing to concede. Agreeing to disagree, it's willpower. It's not logic, because the logic part of your brain, it's functioning, it's in full effect. There's no impediment. There's no, like, in the normal neurotypical brain, you're fine. You're able to use logic, but do you have the willingness to articulate, I agree to disagree, right? It's the willingness. It's also, again, it's empathy. You had, like, if you lack empathy for the person that you're with, and you can't see, that means that you can't see yourself in them, and they can't see yourself in you, and as a result, you don't ever feel the need to say, you know what, I agree to disagree. You just don't care enough. You just say, there's no willingness, you don't care. But if you have empathy for people and compassion, you can see things through their eyes. You can put yourself in their shoes, and it's not hard to agree to disagree. It's like, you know what, I could see how you got there. I disagree, but I understand. So we can agree to disagree. So if you're dealing with people who are very rigid, who are very stubborn, who are, and statistics tend to reflect that this is something that they see in men, especially in marriages and relationships, and usually why therapy is needed as you know, a remedy. But any rigidity is not going to work. And when someone says, hey, if my girl is acting like this, I revert to acting the complete opposite, I think, to me, sometimes that can be problematic. I think sometimes it's about balance, and I don't think the complete opposite end of the spectrum is balance. I think two extremes might be a recipe for disaster. If people are operating on two separate extremes of a spectrum, it could be problematic. I think the middle ground is where most people should live. The gray area is where we should live.
Yes, I was going to say that too, and Alicia, actually, I was going to say that men, especially like AV, you said that you understood that women were emotional, but then in the same breath, you say, well, I'm going to meet her emotional with logic, right? So it's like you all try to rationalize our emotion, and that is, like Annalicia said, problematic, and it could be like gaslighting too, right? It could be like, if I'm feeling some way, you don't have to mansplain my feelings, right? You either try to be willing to understand where I'm coming from, or you just kind of not. So I think there's some things that you said were like, yeah, I understand that women lead with her emotions, but then also I'm going to meet her with logic and like kind of criticize her for leading with emotion. It's weird that men do that. I think if you're well aware, like we know that you're logical, right? And so if we meet you with emotion and we understand that you're in a logical place or a rational mindset, then we still try to like make you understand how we feel about it. I get what you're saying, that's kind of like, oh, you just, that need to be right, or you feel like she's just trying to be right. But it's the same on the opposite end. Like when we're emotional or we're feeling some way, the logic doesn't really connect with us in that moment, because this is just how we feel, right? You can't always rationalize someone's feelings, or you can't always apply logic to it. I mean, somebody told me the Solomon story. I know most of y'all probably heard that story before, right? So it is what it is. Like you can cut the baby in half, or you can decide to give the baby to the woman. Like it's the same thing. Sometimes emotion is the answer. It's how you feel. It's no way to, make that logical, right? Go ahead.
Y'all. Look, I agree with the men that women are emotional. So
no, you agree with the men.
Yeah, listen. So
wait, the women, we said that women are emotional too, though.
I know, but coming from an old guy,
you gotta agree with the men. Okay, that's fine.
The women agreed that women are emotional.
Yeah, we're all emotional. I'm just saying, y'all can't make logical arguments with our emotion. Like we don't give a damn about what logic you have. If
I didn't bring it up
this way, this is how I feel.
No, I don't.
I didn't bring it up for that reason. I didn't bring it up for that reason. I brought it up to say this. It's not our job. Somebody was talking just now?
That was Annalicia, I think.
Go ahead, Reese, go ahead.
Listen, it's not our job to ignite that emotion and to light that fire. You see what I'm saying? When you recognize it, sometimes you gotta be man enough to take a step back. I was on a live stream with these sisters a couple shows ago, and I heard all three of them say, that if you put a divine example in front of them, they will follow you. All three of them said it, right? Y'all remember saying that, right?
You said a what? A
You said
divine
if a man puts a divine example in front of you and shows you
example.
that you would follow him, right? So I'm gonna give the guys an example because when I come in here, I always try to come in here with solutions. I'll tell you about what I'm doing. All right. So 8 years ago, I went on a 4-year reading binge. 4 years, 4 hours a day. I had books. I'm 6'4", and my books were like over me. You see what I'm saying? I worked on my mind. I stopped eating meat. I turned vegan. And the reason why I did that is because I understand that all of God's information is recorded in the DNA of fruit and vegetables. So you have to be careful what you take in, because what you take in is what you're going to give out. You see what I'm saying? And that's where a lot of our negativity comes from, just from what we're consuming. A lot of people don't know this. You see, and the reason why I know it's true is because I did it myself. I remember what was in my head when I was eating meat and all types of toxic stuff. And after I turned vegan and stopped using store-bought products, washing my body down with food oils and stuff like that, I started thinking differently. And positive thoughts started coming into my mind. And I noticed every day I was becoming a better man, and it was happening rapidly. So now I carried this for 4 years, but I'm not done yet. You see what I'm saying? I listen to these sisters and what they describe as how value and so what that does, instead of motivating me to combat them, it motivated me. Well, look, shit, let me try it out and check them on it. I'm gonna raise myself to a higher level and check the females in the world on it. See what I'm saying? So what I'm going to do this year is I'm not going anywhere near any women until August, and Alicia. But I'm also going to try to put on 15 pounds of muscle, and I'm going to try to put 100,000 away to raise my value in every aspect. I'm going to reach out to my kids more. You know what I mean? Do more yoga and everything to better myself. That way, I won't be able to complain about nothing, because here I am. What you're looking for, let's see what's popping. Work on yourself. Stop worrying about all the bullshit that women is doing. Work on yourself and see what happens. Debating them and going against them is not going to better yourself. All it's going to do is give you more anger, more tension, and you're going to be looking at a fucking heart attack or something.
Were you telling Annalisa she's got to wait till August now? Is
that
what you were telling?
Really quickly, I just want to address Shay, because I think this is an amazing stream. Thank you again so much from the bottom of my heart for giving me your time. But I noticed I thought people like Shay would learn something from this panel, because I noticed that Shay spends a lot of time in the chat talking about how bad women are, how they only want money. And it's like these men are all telling you, these are all men here. It's not even the women speaking. These are all men saying, better yourself, concentrate on yourself, furnish your own life before you invite anyone in. You spend so much time talking negatively about women, how negative women are in relationships, that you're not taking the time to listen. Here we have some amazing men who have experienced all kinds of things, and they're explaining how you can overcome and hold yourself accountable for how you've participated in those relationships that has you in every single chat of mine talking about how horrible women can be and how they only want money. Brother, you are still stuck there. Take the time to listen. You're typing so much, but you're not listening. You have to listen. I mean, there's a barrage of comments from you every single stream about how horrible women are. And if you don't have money, you don't mean anything. It's not about the woman. It's about what you're not fulfilling in your own life. Just a word of advice. Don't listen to me. The men are saying the same thing.
I think he's MGTOW.
Can I chime in off that real quick?
I'm getting MGTOW because he's here in my chat and I'm a woman.
I think he's MGTOW. He comes here to just show us how much.
Can I chime in after you, brother?
Yeah, for sure.
And can I respond to I think it was.
Well, let Glenn go, Annalisa, because we haven't heard from him in a while, and then you go after that.
A few things.
Thank you.
One, I want to say every guy in every relationship, the common denominator is the guy. So, and that's the same thing with women. All right, everybody on this stream is the common denominator in all their problems is you. okay, is me. I'm the common denominator in all my problems, and I have to accept that. All right. And that's one reflection that guys have to do and women need to do on themselves. But I wanted to highlight something again. I think because you brought emotionalism and logic and reason into this, and I know I brought it up in the beginning, but I want to make a point is that when we're talking about processing information, and AV said it, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And see, happiness is an emotion that is short-lived, but being right could be the difference between life and death, making a bad decision and a right decision. And that's where you have to understand that when we're processing and we're having a debate or having a discussion, you may feel a certain way. And I always tell people, like, well, ask yourself, if are you feeling upset about what I'm saying because I'm wrong? Or are you upset that I'm right and that there's something that you could change about it? You know what I'm saying? Because that's most of the time when I get upset, it's because I feel like I'm upset about something. I don't like what they're saying. But I have to ask myself, is what the context of what they're saying, is it right? Is it true? Is it sound? And if it is, then I'm upset because I don't necessarily operate that way, or I have areas in my life where I have shortcomings and, that I need to work on. But see, a lot of people don't want to do that self-reflection when they feel upset or they feel a certain way. And that's the problem, is because the self-reflection makes you have to look at your own shortcomings, and nobody wants to do that. Men and women don't want to. I mean, look, I don't know how many casts and streams have been onto this Tinder swindler, and how there's a GoFundMe to help support the girls who got scammed by this guy. And I'm sitting here wondering, like, that right there is a pure example of an emotional pull. Feel bad for us. We got gamed by this guy that took our money. Now pay us so we don't have to be responsible for our actions. And that's a problem with emotionalism. Because logic is be like, why would I send you money? You're bad with money. Obviously, you invested in somebody that wasn't going to give you nothing. So it's like, do you see where it's like you have to have a logical balance and emotional balance at the same time. But you have to both sides have to try to understand that when we're communicating, we may be speaking English, but it's coming out Chinese when we process it. And there has to be patience.
How can men understand that women is emotional, but then at the same time still criticize you for being naturally that way? I don't know I don't understand it. I guess I'm trying to understand. I know where you're coming from, that you got to have the balance. And I think most people do, want to have balance or try to have balance. But if one group of people is one way naturally, and we know that, so for instance, like, I'll be on these panels and I'll hear men say to women, like, you being emotional, like, what's the point of saying that? It's just, it doesn't make sense to me to criticize someone for being naturally who they are, or to expect something different. So you're expecting a woman to have a logical response when naturally she's emotional. It doesn't make sense to me. I guess that doesn't make sense to me. And I guess it seems like so, like, for me, if I'm expecting a man to have an emotional response when I know he's naturally logical, right? So that's probably the first response I'll get. And then maybe later, as I explain my point, he'll tap into his emotions, right? Same with us. Like, we may get an emotional response first, but then when a man maybe further explains, we may think logically, like, oh, okay, I get where you're coming from. So why not just understand that and rationalize it? I don't know. I feel like we're we're going into it like, no, you just need to be balanced, or
I think what it is like, there needs to be a patience, right?
Yeah.
I think Reese said it, earlier. He's like, sometimes when women are upset and they're responding emotionally, he'll sit back and wait because they can't be emotional at the high level for so long. They have to come down from the emotional high to a more balanced approach. And I think, like, because you said it. You said that you're emotional and sometimes you react emotionally, but you're also a very logical person, right? So it's that patience. Sometimes it just takes that time to be like, Yo, okay, know whether or not this person is emotional, because an emotional person is not going to hear logic in the heat of the moment. Okay, right? The house is on fire, your baby's in the house. You don't care if that house is going to collapse on you and burn you, and you have 7 other kids to take care of. No, you were worried about that one baby that's in there that you're going to run in there and save. That's the emotional pull, right? The logical thing would be like, okay, so when that's the case, you kind of like, let this emotion cool down, let this fire cool down a little bit, because you're not hearing anything that I'm saying. And it's not like you're illiterate or you're not educated enough. It's just that you are charged a certain way at this moment that you cannot articulate or grasp what is being said at that given time. Guys are the same way. Guys get the same way. They
Right,
get that anger, rage, and they getting all, beating on their chest. Rawr, I'm a gorilla, I'm alpha, but then they don't hear any logic that's coming to them. But what I say, like, the response is that on average, men are more logical in their responding than women are. And that's fine. We have differences and we have to embrace these differences. The challenges are that men and women face is how to really navigate the differences. And we brought up accountability and responsibility in the beginning, I heard in this conversation. And the problem with this is and I sent the super chat in where it says that we're looking at accountability and responsibility from one side. And we hear in this conversation, well, if men just do this better, if men learn how to do this, that's an accountability thing, right? Well, the case can be made the same way too. Well, if women just learn this better, that goes back and forth, and that's not a solution. What the solution is both sides understanding that there has to be a level of patience and accountability on both ends to navigate and communicate the correct way, and understanding that some people may be more emotionally charged, and that you have to it's like knowing your audience when you speak, knowing who you're talking to and articulate it in a way that they could receive it. Are you trying to offend them, or are you trying to enlighten them? If you're trying to offend them, say whatever you want. But if you're trying to enlighten somebody, you want them to grasp it and understand it so they could see how that wisdom benefits them. And a lot of these times in these chat rooms, you see a lot of people just throwing out women ain't, trash, and men ain't shit. And it's because they are stuck. They benefit from all that emotionalism. That's exactly what emotional. When I hear guys go, women ain't shit, I'm just like, they want an emotional response. They're not even thinking logically.
So I want to address something that Jabari is, because I make up my own words. I think this is pseudo accountability. And I know Jabari, so I know he's going to say that's not what I meant, because every time I give him pushback, he says that's not how I meant it. But I noticed that I guess he's trying to console Shay, the gentleman I was just speaking about, and he keeps telling him if he's running into bad women over and over again, change his circle, right? All these bad women, every circle you're in, there's bad women. Coincidentally, there's wherever you are, there's a circle of bad women. And he goes on to say most people refuse to change their circles. Then they get upset and frustrated because they continue to meet the same people without changing the circle they're immersed in. So this is my pushback for that. It's you. It's not the circle. There's a reason why you continue to choose those circles and want to be in those circles, because who on earth is always ending up in a circle where everybody's an ogre? Who does that? So this is why it's pseudo accountability. Accountability is telling him what is wrong with you that you always end up in circles with bad women. What is wrong with you? Not what's wrong with that circle of women. What is wrong with you, Shay? Why every circle you end up in, there's nothing but women that want money and they're assholes? What is wrong with you? So we can't coddle we can't coddle adults. And I think there's a lot of coddling that goes on online. I had a girlfriend, a best friend. I used to introduce her to men I thought were decent. Okay, had a good vocabulary, at least were, financially stable. She wanted the guy back in the neighborhood that used to, pound on her but she knew him since she was 14. So he was familiar, right? So was it the guys that I was introducing her to? Was it the circle she was in? Or was it her? Was it her? Why do you continue to end up in these circles where these women are so horrible? So no, sorry, Jabari, I can't get with that coddling. The problem is him, not the circles. because I can go out and choose who I want to be with. Now, if I always go around, a certain caliber of men, then I can't come online and say, every circle I'm in, these men are always saying they just want women for sex. Like, the problem is you. We keep saying it over and over and over again. The common denominator is you.
They say that to us too, like choose better, right? So they're telling you that you're not choosing the right woman, that if you're having the same experience, that's exactly, right. It's the same.
It's not the circle, it's you.
It's definitely you. Yeah.
It's who you're attracting. It's who you're attracting.
Yeah, and Alicia.
Okay, so this is what I wanted to respond with, because I think that there have been some misnomers that historically we've been led to believe. When we talk about things like emotionality, I think we're conflating emotionality with an emotional response, because emotional response doesn't always involve placing emotions over logic. I think that people need to people need to have a better understanding of sort of the way that the brain works, because placing emotion over logic is not always illogical, right? People need to understand that at its core, emotions are meant to get something done. At its base, it's a function. It's very important. Fight or flight comes from the emotional brain, the animal brain, the most primitive part of the brain. So emotions in all contexts are meant to get something done. I don't want to conflate emotionality, if we have to be more intentional, but it's a tendency, it's to overindulge, right? Emotional response and emotionality are two different things. I don't want to conflate them. The second thing that I wanted to say is that, just as an example, right? If someone feels threatened, they're in a situation and they feel threatened and they respond in an aggressive manner, and that's an emotional response, that it's probably more important to protect the organism, to protect yourself through that emotional response, than it is to be, because that the logical part of your brain, it's not always going to get you out of the most dire situation, right? People conflate logic with, I think that men they overvalue logic, and that's why they think that more men are logical, right? I think that they undervalue the emotional response, they undervalue emotionality, and they overvalue logic. So then they sort of think, logic is the most important, so by default men must be more logical. But studies don't bear that out, right? Logic is a learned trait. You have to learn to be logical. That's the reality. And that is predicated on the people that you're around, the environment that you're in, because your brain, literally, the connections that forms, the areas that grow, literally is dependent on what you're doing and how much and where you are in the world, right? Like, I don't want us to get caught up in the gender exclusivity, because it's statistically, it's just not true. It's an base dependent organ.
Is that not true? It's not true. No, so I want to, that's good. I'm glad you said that, because I've just been hearing that my whole life. I don't know if that is even true. So are men not naturally logical and women not naturally emotional? Is there some truth to that though? Well, and Alicia?
Yeah, let me say this too though. Let me piggyback on what Alicia said.
Because I do want to hear her answer that one question though.
Oh, okay. Just real quick.
Then she can answer whatever question, but I do want to just ask for that.
Sure. Just really quickly, just like logic has to be learned, so does emotion. And to each his own, right? So men, in your viewpoint, which I respect, which is fine, in terms of men undervaluing emotion, I think it's about discernment and utilizing that value, utilizing it when it's necessary, right? So to say that men undervalue emotion, because sometimes in your viewpoint, we should be more emotional, but in my particular situation, in my relationship, it may not work. So everybody, it's not a blanket statement. And as far as studies are concerned, studies are definitely valid. But again, it's like, just because it's not proven doesn't mean that it's not realistic in a particular situation. So when you also said too, in regards to in the same breath, you can say that you're going to talk to somebody with logic or emotion. Like, so if you're emotional, you're not trying to hear that logic. At the same token, when you emotional, I'm not trying to when I'm logical, I'm not trying to hear that emotion. So this is where it's a disconnect, right? So you want to be emotional, you want to be heard, fine. I want to be logical, I want to be heard, fine. Neither of us are trying to hear each other. So this is where growth.
But
this is
I
yeah.
disagree.
But Glenn made a comment about the house burning, and like I have my children. If I have 7 children and 6 are outside and 1 is in the house, like emotionally, I would not just run in that building and leave my 6 children. See, like for him to say that, see, it's different emotional responses, even if I'm thinking about that scenario and how I would react to it. So I don't think that it's so simple to just say, oh, like Annalicia said, that an emotional person can't understand logic. I don't believe that.
But you know what
I
it
don't
is
think
too?
that's true.
You know what it is
Right,
too?
you're conflating hyper emotion with emotional response or emotional output. You're conflating 2 completely different sectors of the brain.
Yeah. See, the thing is, it's easy for us to say a hypothetical and how we would react, right? So a lot of tough guys on YouTube say, "Yeah, I would knock this nigga out." They ain't never been in a fight. They don't remember the last time they got their shit split.
I agree with that.
So at the end of the day, it's when we're not in danger, right? It's easy for us to give a hypothesis or an imaginary scenario how we would react until we're actually in that scenario. But like you said, emotions for you saying that you may not react like that, other people might. So when we're talking about this, it's important for the audience, the subs, everyone that's listening, to pick parts of everything, because everybody's valid in their own way. Everything can apply to different people, but this is why conversations like this, where we don't all agree, something's going to be pertinent to other people and vice versa. Because for me, like I said, I co-sign with Glenn, and I co-sign with a lot of shit that you guys said too, but to each his own. Like, so if I vet a woman and I like a certain criteria or certain like that, and I know that sometimes we may go to bed angry. Yes, I know how you act, but sometimes I may pick my battles and shit and be like, all right, cool, I'm gonna let that shit ride, or vice versa. I'm just gonna let it ride, because you got to prioritize what's important and what's not. Sometimes you got to overlook shit. Sometimes you can't make something small into something big. So as far as studies and this and that and what men do and what they use in the brain, that's cool. But if a person doesn't have discernment enough to realize that while that may be cool, that may not work for me in my house, that's the problem. That's the disconnect. And a lot of people hold on to people like us on the mic as we're the gospel. And it may be the gospel because we believe in it, but it may not work for everybody. And that's the big disconnect that a lot of people can't think for themselves.
I mean, I think that you don't have to say stuff like that. I think that's understood. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, but like, a lot of people don't.
That's what people watch us for. They know to take what I say.
Nah, they don't. They don't.
Take what Glenn
Listen, I'm telling you.
I mean, it just kind of seems like Captain Obvious. Like,
no, it's not. Trust me. Let me tell you something. As that's what I'm saying. Like, it's to the point when earlier, you'd be surprised that grown ass men are asking silly ass questions.
No, I wouldn't. I believe that grown.
You'll be surprised that men are being looked at as these gods, and I'm like, what are they talking about? But this is how lost men are. This is how lost women are too, because women have bad role models too, and we looking at them on TikTok like, and there's dudes making content about the foolishness that women are doing, looking up at the Megan Thee Stallions, the Cardi B's, and all that silly shit. Then you got other dudes in Lamborghinis that look crazy, leading a whole bunch of other men bashing women.
Yeah, so, we don't think men are gods. I don't participate.
That's fine.
In
that's
black
fine.
English.
That's fine. That's fine. But at the end of the day, there's no Captain Obvious.
Let me respond to that, because I think that, and I'm not playing with semantics. I'm not talking about myself personally. I when I have these conversations, I'm just having them generally, because I mean, it's easier for people to resonate with a general conversation than it is to, talk about ourselves personally. But I think that, so for me anyways, I think that, because you said something earlier, you said, if my girl's being emotional, I'm so logical that I don't even want to deal with it. I can't understand it. And to me, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like, I think that it's a false dichotomy. because there is such a thing in literature as emotional logic, right? So working out logically how someone's going to respond to your behavior, or how someone's likely to respond to your behavior, or the behavior of others based on a certain set of circumstances, is emotional logic, right? So it's like a pendulum. If you and that's balance. You have to have balance. If you're saying, hey, I'm one way, I'm not going to deal with you if you're another way. There's no balance. There's no middle ground, and that's illogical. At its core, that is illogical, because if you are logical, you want to come to a consensus. You want to resolve the problem. That's logic, right? That's how you move civilization forward. You solve problems. So I think that's, for me, that's the dichotomy. That's where I'm going to always deviate and split ways. But I also think that somebody said it, when this has been accepted, this has been an accepted norm for decades. So is this biologically, neurologically true, or is this a societal and social norm that we've been conditioned to believe, right? Is it, to me, it's the chicken or the egg argument, right? Because we could talk about this all day, but really, men built society. And for a long time, women didn't have rights. Women were second-class citizens. So is it that they're just hysteric, they lack logic and reasoning, or is that something that has been we've been socialized, and it's a part of the fabric of the conditioning that we've all been susceptible to, right? Chicken or egg. For me, I think that based on the brain and how malleable and plastic it is, to posit something so absolute, it can't be true, right?
Nice.
If you're saying that this is an absolute truth, you have to prove it, because I'm telling you that the brain is much more complex than absolutes, because it's ever changing. Science is ever changing. So let's just be careful with information that we're submitting as absolutes, and as, that's my thing.
Is there like trends though of what women traditionally do versus men, or are you saying that it can change with any gender, or is it just kind of a people thing?
But that's a good point as well, right, Juana? If for a long time, women were socialized to stay home, to be the nurturers, so it was having that sense of emotionality, I'm saying it in quotes, was sort of socialized. That sort of, it was conditioned into women, right? This is how you behave. You're demure, you're submissive, and this was the only thing that was acceptable for women for a long time. But depending on the community you're talking about, so for example, I'm going to use the Black community as an example. What you see is a complete shift in gender norms and gender roles. So you see women who are sort of superimposed into positions that men are in, and they're more logical. They're paying the bills, they're running their households, and they're that they're employing logic, right? You have to be logical to successfully run a household and rear children, or go to school, get degrees, run a business. So yeah, to me, again, a lot of this is socialization. A lot of this is conditioning. And for me, it's like, that's fine. But socialization, social norms, these things also change. Right? Look at where women were 100 years ago versus now. It's going to continue to change. The way that science will continue to change, the way that psychology will continue to change, the way that the brain will continue to change. I'm just saying that it's a fallacy to submit or to posit one absolute over another. I wouldn't say women are more. I wouldn't say men are more. There are too many variables, and it's ever changing.
Yeah, and that's why I said on a general study, because there is a study. I have one right here. It's quoted in Forbes. It was preceding the National Academic Society journal. David DiSalvo, he's a healthcare professional, wrote this article, and this was dated back in December of 2019. And the question, the statement is said that men and women brains think differently on a very basic general level. They respond to stimuli differently. Means that the same thing that they were stimulated, they did, like if for emotional or something tragic, it stimulated men's brains differently than it stimulated women's brains. Okay, and then in this article talks about women's brains are typically they are horizontally connected to the right and the left hemisphere. Men are more front and back, horizontally going this way. And it just says that when the things stimulate them differently, they process the information differently. It's not saying that it's wrong, it's differently. And when we talking about men not understanding emotion or not thinking the way that are processing information emotionally, you have to look at it from the hindbrain standpoint of what emotion to men are responding emotionally has always been negative. Okay. You love that woman, I'm going to fight you to the death. Now you're dead. Okay, well, you lost that duel, buddy. But I loved her so much. Romeo and Juliet type of thing. Emotionalism logic is more conservative thinking, like not conservative in the sense of Republican or Democrat, but more safety thinking. I need to logically plan this out before doing it. I'm not going to run in there and not know what I'm facing. It's a logical process, in the way that we think. Sometimes, and this is not in all cases, we don't see that logical process in thinking when we're emotional. And you are right. It is socialized to an extent. That's why we're having this. What is a real man? The fact that we have to ask this question, what is a real man, is because we have socialized boys to not be men, to really reject their manliness or their masculinity. Okay, we have taught boys to not like being a man, to not embrace their breaks.
But do you agree with what Annalicia kind of said, where it's like you guys kind of value logic more than emotion? Like, even if we're let's just assume that women are emotional.
Yeah, he said yes.
He said yes, that you are. And that's the thing. It's like you kind of degrade. That's the point, though. Why is it that one is? You just said that we just think differently, right?
Yes,
so one is not better than the other. It's just two. You can see the balance in it, right? Because you need logic and you need emotion. You can't. So therefore, it's kind of even justifies further why we should partner and try to work together, because we have different approaches to life. So I just don't understand why men use it as a negative sometimes. I just think that you should just embrace it as this is
it's not used as a negative. It's used as the fact that
negatively,
you could take it that way, but it's not used negatively in the sense of when men act emotionally. That if you want statistics, 3.5 times.
No, he's right.
Men,
he's right.
Hold on. 3.5 times men commit suicide after a relationship ends because of emotionalism. They lost the woman that they love. That's them reacting emotionally. So to say that they don't act, that's where it's detrimental to men to not think about things and not act emotionally.
I'm talking about like healthy emotion, not like.
No, I'm saying emotionalism in general. Guys have had to learn to check that emotion, okay? Because we see these stories, we see them in movies. I'm in Hollywood. That's all that I do is make movies and music videos, okay? And I always play either the bad boyfriend or the guy that dies or the bad guy. And I have no problem playing these characters. Yeah, I always get shot somewhere, But the fact is, like the character that I'm playing right now, Deathstroke, he's a comic book character. And we really rewrote this script because we made Robin what he is now. He's this really emotional guy. He's going in head first, not thinking. He's just like, Deathstroke did something to me. I'm going to go fight him. He's not countering the fact that Deathstroke is stronger than him, benches 465 pounds today, and, could crush him. You know what I'm saying? He was responding. So for men to jump
that's an unhealthy way to do it.
But that's how men's brains, they don't, since they don't process it the same way women do. Right. Women have more security in responding emotionally than men do. That's all I'm trying to say. So men
I agree with that.
It's true.
Right.
as Anna said, I think it's socialized though.
Let me.
Yeah, it is
Can
socialized,
we
but
do a
men will
super, wait,
prioritize.
can we do a super chat break? Let me do a really super chat break. Ill Doctrine, thank you for the super chat. He says we are missing logical. Logic is a method applied to considering info and determining its reasonability. It can be learned and practiced by anyone. Men are logical. Is itself a manifestation of the stigma against male experiences of emotion.
This is what I've been saying. So and hold on, let me say something before I forget, because I think, like, I agree with him, and I think I said something to that effect earlier. Men and women are emotional. We are emotional beings at our core. We're animals, really. But our output and our affect is different. That's the reality. But the affect and the output, that's socialization. That's conditioning, right? And again, is it chicken or is it the egg? And science just psychology bears out something different based on what I've seen, based on what I've been privy to. It just doesn't bear out where, you know, men are more this and women are more this. It doesn't work that way. The brain doesn't work that way, right? Because the brain is malleable. It's plastic. It changes. So even if you were to say, because you said that men are committing suicide based on emotionality, men commit suicide at higher rates than women. So should we take that to say that women in general are more logical? Because suicide is not a logical act
what I said,
in any capacity, right?
That makes sense.
I said
wait. Let me finish.
After a relationship.
Right, but let me finish. But
that's a good point.
Statistically, men also commit suicide at higher rates than women across all races. So if you're going to use that with that line of reasoning, we can also reason that maybe women are more logical, because there's nothing logical in suicide, right? I'm just saying that's why it may be a fallacy and a false equivalency to use those arguments or to try to submit any absolute in this conversation. I think that the meeting in the middle, let's live in the gray area where it's exactly what Il Doctrine is saying. Like, that's where I think people should live. I think that men specifically swing so far, and it's so illogical to swing so far to the other end of the pendulum where it's only logic, it's only alpha, it's only masculine. That's not malleable. That's not plastic. That
I've been in this.
You're
been
not
in this
going to
space
be
too long, and we seen no men be logical. I don't know why I'm sitting here keep repeating that when I see them. They're not logical at all. They're very emotional.
We're going to get into what we've seen and experienced and have been, you know what I mean, at the front of.
Well, you know what I was saying though.
Super chat break, a super sticker. Thank you so much, Don Levon. I really do.
No, where's your not all sign?
It's right here. I used it already a couple times.
No, what I was mentioning was that even though I know that I've seen examples of men not being that way, because I've been socialized. So now I'm listening to what Anna's saying. And so I've been socialized to think that men are logical and women are this, right? So I keep repeating it, even though in real life, I've seen the very opposite, where men make very emotional decisions all the time. And I'm still sitting here repeating it like it's true, even though I've seen it not be true on several occasions. So why am I? It's like a light bulb when she said that. That's all.
Let me just say this real quick before I hop off, Jen. I'm gonna hop off after this statement.
Okay. And then I have a question for Glenn.
Sure. Let me just say this real quick. To Annalicia, I don't think, first of all, in terms of living in the gray areas, that shouldn't be applicable to everything, right? That's kind of like there's some non-negotiables, there are some negotiables, there's some compromise, etc. And there are no absolutes. I don't think Glenn is saying there are absolutes. We're talking about our own experiences. This is why sometimes you select particular people with their own life experiences. Now, for me, I don't think there is any absolutes. Like you said, you made a lot of valid points that I agreed with. There's some points that I don't agree with because they don't apply to me in my experiences. Now, as far as Anna is concerned, I know that you mentioned that you don't understand why men use logic as something, or emotion as something is deemed as negative. I think it's all based on interpretation, right? So for us men, you know, sometimes when a man appears to be emotional, just like how you're saying, the go-to shaming language is man up. You're not acting logical, right? And for women, when you crying or doing some silly shit, I don't want to hear that shit. You acting emotional. So it's all about interpretation and the shit that you say. So when you're in a relationship, you saying that, that's a condescending and that's not an effective way to hear the other person out. So at the end of the day, in closing for me, man, I think everyone should really pick and choose how they're going to react in their particular situations and scenarios. There are a lot of men out there that act very emotional. They need some growing, some growing to do. And a lot of women don't let men, or a lot of men don't let women communicate the way that they can. And I think a lot of women don't um aren't also accepting of men not agreeing with them. So it's a uphill battle, but I think conversations like this are very important because everyone has brought a lot of things to the table, and in the playback you guys can really, you know, listen to it and kind of apply it to your life. But I appreciate you, Jen, man. I'm looking forward to doing more of these. Thank you so much for inviting me on your platform. Salute and respect to everybody that's on the yeah, it's midnight over here. I'm on the East Coast. I'm tired.
Listen, I was about to get off too with
Yeah,
AB.
so
I
yes,
was trying to
yeah.
get
So
off
I
too.
appreciate everybody. You guys can,
AP, before you go, I'd like to, a lot of people are requesting, I'd like for us to do this with the men once a week. If you guys are open to it, I think
I'm with it. Absolutely, man.
So
I
thank you so
appreciate
much
you.
for being here.
Thank you so much, man. You guys can subscribe to my channel at Alpha Villains. I got a morning show, Finish Your Breakfast with AV, Monday through Friday. I appreciate you, Jen. Thank you so much. Salute to the chat. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Peace, peace, peace.
Good night.
Hey, Jen. So I just wanted to say something
really quickly. I just wanted to say thank him again. Thank you, Alpha Villains. He really does have a great page. It's intriguing. I agree with a lot of what he says. So check his page out if you can, and also his Instagram page. I do enjoy his content. It's well put together too. For someone who's new, he's not struggle streaming like me. What were you saying?
I was just going to say, in relationship to, we have to make a discernment of an emotional.
One minute. Can I wanted to get off because I know, Ishmael, I want to stop you because I know you would go for 20 minutes, Ishmael. No, I'm just I just want to stop you, Ishmael, so I can get off and say bye to everybody because I know you got to, I'm going to listen, but I got to get off, you know, so see you later. Thank you, Jen. Great show. I really enjoyed everybody, and I appreciate just hearing the men and their perspective. And you know, nobody cried today. This was like super exciting. I was just really happy to see men just, you know, have a conversation, and present logic without being, you know, because women, we're usually the logical ones. No, I'm just playing. But you guys have a good show. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Glenn. Bye, sis.
Bye, Wana. Love you.
Bye, Reese. Love you guys.
Okay. Bye, Wana. And you can find Wana at Wana Chica on Instagram and on YouTube. Gracias.
So I was just going to respond. We have to just make a discernment at a certain point from someone just being emotional to an emotional reaction, and they were triggered by maybe something that was stated, and how they choose to react. And a lot of times there are, you know, men are not, or males are not equipped on how to handle that and to respond to an emotional reaction. And it doesn't make someone bad because they have an emotional reaction, because like it was stated that we're all emotional beings. But it is definitely, and you cannot, you know, dictate someone how they're going to respond or react based upon what triggers them. We have to just as individuals learn how to respond and assess what's taking place in that moment and being present in relationship to that. Because, you know, it always, you know, it irritates me when I hear, you know, men say, well, you know, don't be so emotional. It's like, well, you just said something that triggered this person's emotions. So you're asking them to be disingenuous to what they're experiencing at that time. Just because you're not equipped in how to manage someone that's in a space where their emotions are triggered. And that's something that I think we have to really learn to evolve in, you know, when we're in these public platforms of communication. and then number two, I wanted to respond to a statement of the young man who was talking about how, women are always about money and this, that, and the other. But, that's a byproduct of instinct, survival, and nature. It's not something that, women many women, and some, not all, are looking for a provider. And that's not a bad thing. That's nature that we've observed and measured. So if that's the case, many men that have a problem with that don't measure up, and that's really where the issue is that when you're mad that somebody has is utilizing their ability to provide as a tool for them to gain access, but at the same time, they may have other male deficits, but because they have a strong suit in the ability to acquire money and manage wealth and finances, that has in this society become the predominant attractive component. So you can't fault the woman for that, for following her nature of saying, okay, this man has proven that he has the ability to do something here. He has the ability to protect. He has the ability to provide. He has these abilities. She is drawn and attracted to that individual. So you can't go, oh, she's a bad woman. No, she's following her nature. And she then has to have the personal discernment to discern whether this man is worthy of her time and her energy and her efforts, based upon what she's attracted to. So, when I saw the young man on the talking about, women are gold diggers, and he didn't use the term gold digger, so I don't want to qualify it like that. But if you're not a provider, or that's a deficit on your side, then that just shows you where you need to do the work.
Right. So let me respond to Era Black TV. I don't know if I'm not familiar with you, and I don't know if you're familiar with my content, but what you see on this panel, this is my circle. So I know you're used to the toxicity of YouTube and channels where women bash men all day and men bash women, but here that's not what I do. When I go on certain panels and I speak to certain men, it can get toxic. But here on this channel, I know these men. Okay, this is my circle. These are the men I attract and the men I'm attracted to. And that's why I specifically did this panel, to show the other side. So I don't know if you're familiar with me or the other women on the panel, but we don't, stay up all day and night and talk about the wrong man or who the wrong man is. I have discernment. I know who's good and who's bad and what have you. So I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I do understand that in these spaces, there will be people that find the problem to every solution. So no, I'm not here to man bash, but we have to talk about both sides. Hence, what is a real man? And I invited men to answer specifically, because I didn't want women to answer. I wanted men to answer. FYI. I wanted to
respond to that brother right there.
Wait, there was a question for where is it? Where was the inner nerd thing?
Oh yeah, I think that was for me.
Yeah, it was for you. It was the inner nerd. They were asking about, were you doing the voiceover or live action?
No, it's a live action. That's a still from the shot we just did. Me fighting Robin. Yeah, it'll be coming out soon.
I also had a question for you. When you said earlier, I found it interesting when you said earlier that boys are raised like being a man is a bad thing, right? When do you think that happened? Because in my experience, it's always like, man up, be a man, don't cry, do this, which turned into toxic masculinity. You know what I mean? So where have you seen that boys are now being reared to not be proud of being men, or being a man, quote unquote, is a bad thing? I was just curious about that.
Okay, well, let's just look at how things were 30, 40 years ago, right? Men had standards. In order to be accepted into the sphere of men, like as a peer, there was standards that a man had for each other. We guys will tell you, like the saying is, real recognize real, right? So we also recognize what's fake because we don't see each other the same way. So it's the same thing. There were standards. Men have standards for each other. Like, for instance, if I'm going to the gym and I'm going to lift heavy, I scope the gym who I can see will spot me. And if nobody's at that caliber, that I'll get somebody else. You know what I'm saying? And that's because I recognize that they're not at par here. So men understand that. But what we did now, and it started with youth sports, okay, in my opinion, it really did. When you have participation trophies just for showing up, that's a problem. Trophies go to the winners. Winners put their work in to become winners. But you have this emotional side, and this is, I don't know, I'm not going to say it's all moms, but you have the soccer mom genre and soccer dads that are mad that little Timmy didn't get a trophy. You know, Timmy deserves a trophy too. He was out there and he tried. And that right there is where we started seeing slowly this standard, the standard that we have set for winners and for men, start to diminish. Okay, I just watched a video where a trans woman was trying to say that she couldn't describe what a woman was. She said a woman is a feeling. And see, that's the problem where we're at to this day in our society, is that we are saying, oh, you could be a man. You could be a man. You could be a woman. You could wake up tomorrow and be a man if you want. You can identify as a man. And that's washing away the standards of men and women. Okay. And so the problem is when we water down the standards and expectations that we have for people. Okay. If you're going to be a general in the army, I expect you to have this criteria. You know how to go to battle. You know how to scheme wars. You know how to do these things. But if you don't, I'm not putting you in that position just because you did the time of service. Just because you have 20 years doesn't mean you have the knowledge and the know-how to meet the standard to do that. But what we have done is we have watered down the standard for men, okay? And then we're wondering why we have nothing but fuckboys. Well, we have fuckboys because we watered down the standard of men. And that's where we're at today. We have a bunch of little boys running around placating that they're men, but they're not men. And we're wondering, why do we have this epidemic? Because we watered the standard down for men.
Absolutely.
And then we're doing the same thing for women. And then now you got guys crying foul that women are this or that they're gold diggers, or they're after this, they're after that. If you don't meet this standard of a woman that she wants you to meet, that's not her fault. You shouldn't fault her to lower her standards. Just like you shouldn't lower your standards for a guy if a woman doesn't meet your criteria.
Right.
You know, like that's like, don't water down what you want for your partner at all. I think you need to be realistic. You know, if you are broke, buck teeth, and you have you're out of shape, stop looking at models and wondering why you can't get none, because you're not.
That's funny as shit, yo. That's funny as hell. Hey, yo, the brother in the black shirt, believe me, right? You mentioned how back in the day we had standards, right? So we did have standards, and there weren't no conversations and debates about it. It was just like natural. It was passed down. It was a natural thing. And there wasn't even a situation where women had to get involved in the conversation because it wasn't an issue. It was just passed down naturally, and everything was flowing organically. Somewhere something went left. And that the guy that was in the comment section talking shit, well, listen, of course we got issues with women that are out here doing it, but it's not these three that's on this panel. So I go to manosphere channels and discuss issues, but I'm not going to come to it. That's not the topic. That wasn't in the headline. You dig me? So there's places to do that if you want to do that. You know what I'm saying? But here, I mean, I'm not going to bring it in here. And I'm an old man, man. Just listen to me. I would suggest that you don't bring it in here. If you came in, that means you want to hear something.
Right.
What did you come here to listen to? You know what I mean? You didn't come here for war. That's corny. You know, and the brother to the left, you know, he mentioned that everything is a straight line, and Alicia mentioned the membrane of the elasticity of the brain. And I know she's not just talking about the membrane. that goes further than that. The deposits that come in, and that governs your emotions. Some of your emotions. Some of them are natural, but some of them can be governed by the deposits that come in, and that's where we come at fault. The deposits that we're making. You see them, you recognize emotion, and then men try to match it, which is, I'm not even going to disrespect women and say that it's female. I don't know what to call it. Maybe a bitch move or something, and then we ignite it and then complain when the chick is breathing fire on it. I wish I could I would give my right arm to show you a picture of a nigga in jail that got 4 bodies, could bench press 400 pounds, and curled up in the corner on the phone with a towel over his head, crying to a woman, dog. I'm talking about the hardest niggas you ever seen. Tattoos. It's sad out here, man. And I love hearing this discussion about emotions. And because I studied some psychology, I had access to books from like grand libraries from like the top 3 universities in America. So these libraries take all the curriculums from the other universities to another level. So the kids that go to college, 99% of them, they get a curriculum and then they get dropped off. You see what I'm saying? And it all goes further. And only 1% of the graduating class, 1% of the graduating class at these universities have access to these libraries. And this is where your slick politicians come from, and all these devious people that are our controllers. Those are the people that come through those libraries. It's like an initiation. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because they're the ones that are governing these deposits that come into our mind and govern our emotions and every other brain function, except for the natural ones. You know what I'm saying? So that goes back to the phonological loop lesson that I gave y'all before. It goes deeper than what the psychology books at Temple are saying. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, look, men need to step up and take a step back at the same time. You don't have to engage these women and match their ferocity. Sometimes you can win by losing. I'm gonna leave it with that. Oh, before I get out of here, I got one question for the guy in the black shirt. This has nothing to do with nothing, but I'm trying to put on 25 pounds this year. Muscle. I'm vegan though.
But it's a real man.
I'm vegan though. I've never went on a mission like this before. What, you got any tips for like a vegetarian?
Okay, so there's a lot of different plant source based proteins that you could utilize to consume in your diet. It's all diet. 90% of gaining weight, losing weight is all diet. All right. If you're trying to put on size, I would definitely recommend doing like a 5x5 workout or a 3x5 workout. It's more of a powerlifting workout where it's 5 reps of 5 sets at like your 70 or 80% your max weight that you could bench. So for instance, if you could bench 315 for 1 rep, right? Your 5x5 would probably be somewhere about 250 for 5. And so it's heavier weight, lower reps. What that does is it tears the muscles more, which causes more growth. Okay.
Hypertrophy.
Hypertrophy. Yeah. Yep. You're working, you're going to phase out, you're burning out your fast twitching muscles way quicker that way. So you're having to use that raw strength and making sure you have the right protein supplements in your body. If you're not taking, animal protein, definitely look at some very good, I'm going to throw a plug in for a supplement brand here. First Form supplements. They're 1 out of 3 supplements that are FDA regulated. I was sponsored by them for a while. They're a great brand. I don't know if they have any plant-based proteins out yet, but I know that they were working on them. But just look up First Form. That's a great supplement brand. They'll give you all your aminos, all your proteins and stuff. Because really what you need to do is put in, 1, you have to eat a lot more. And 2, you're going to have to put in a lot of proteins from other sources that you're not getting. That's going to be key. If you're not getting enough protein, your body is not going to be able to recover and put on the size.
All right, one more quick one. So I got a 3-hour cardio program. Should I cut it down?
I would stop it.
Stop it?
You know what? Hey, here's a Bible verse. A foolish man runs when no one's chasing him. That's in Proverbs.
Hey man, listen, I appreciate that. So everybody, all the men in the chat, you just witnessed, this is how you level up. You reach out to another man, drop your pride, asking for advice. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get better, and I need y'all help. So I'm gonna keep coming back. All right. I love all of y'all, man.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you. Peace. So this super chat brought a tear to my eye. This super chat right here brought a tear to my eye, and here's why. because Il Doctrine just said, thank you for the super chat, but he just said, a man invites a woman to be in his peace, not to be his peace. Hashtag on simp. Let me tell you something.
I love that.
That is so simple, but so profound, because it goes back to my ride or die thing that just makes me cringe when I hear a man say ride or die, or you got
suicide mission.
Like it's disgusting to me. So it's like, and now we hear that a lot parroted online. You got to be his peace. No, you have to have peace already. Okay, what is this? What are we turning into? I'll be your peace. Why are you at war before I even got there? So
well, I said, like, a lot of guys think that, you know, they have to the whole fairy tale analogy is that they have to be the knight in shining armor, rescuing the princess from the tower that's guarded by the dragon. And sometimes what they don't realize is that the princess is the dragon. And they go into this like Captain Save 'em, you know, mentality, and then they don't assess. And that's another response of emotionalism that guys fail to do. They feel like they have this need. I need to be the hero. And sometimes you got to take a pause. You know, I agree with, you know, AV, you know, peace over pussy, or, you know, peace over dick, however you want to word it. You know, it's the truth. Whoever's in your life, if they take away from your peace, then you really need to realize maybe you're not in the right situation with the right person, because nobody in your life, if your significant other is not helping you maintain that peace, if they're bringing catastrophe or calamity and strife in your peaceful situation, then you need to realize that they need to be removed, or you need to push them back until they work on what they need to do in order to be that partner for you, if that's what they want. You know, a lot of times you got people in the relationships and they're like, oh, we're going to make it work. Relationships are not supposed to be hard. Okay. Work is hard. Life is hard. Who you choose to spend your life with shouldn't be hard, but it's hard when we're fighting over this peace thing, when peace is supposed to be something unity that brings us together. Fighting for our peace together is something that's supposed to unite us, not divide us. And for some reason, we get people responding, a lot of guys, and I say, because I can't fix women, and I don't try to fix women. I try to fix guys, because I understand their perspective, and I've been where they've been through. And I'm not going to tell you women ain't this or women ain't that. There's women that do a lot of bad behavior, just as there's men that does a lot of bad behavior. I can't correct women bad behavior, but I could definitely try to correct male bad behavior. And a lot of the time, guys are responding way too emotional these days. Oh, she was my one. One? There's plenty of ones. There's one over there. There's one over here. Like that's the Disney narrative that we were taught as kids, is that there's one true love, and that once they're gone, that's it. And back to male suicide, that's why a lot of guys do it. Nobody's gonna love me like her. I lost her. She was my one. And then they delete themselves. You know, they look for permanent situation. They look for permanent solutions for temporary fixes. And that's where the emotional band-aid needs to be realized there, is that when guys respond in a certain way, since they do not operate in that emotional thinking all the time naturally, it's very chaotic. You know, you've seen guys get super mad for no reason, and then you see guys get super emotional for no reason. You're just like, wow, bro, calm down, get your emotions in check, because they're not, as Annalicia said, they're not wired to, or they're not exercising that brain. Absolutely. But they're not exercising that brain to a degree that they are taught to do so in a way that's conclusive, that's going to be beneficial for them in the long run.
So Glenn, Annalicia wants to ask you something, but Lawrence Ritano in the chat says, who are you and do you have a channel? He's Glenn Lawrence. And Glenn, do you have a channel?
I do have a channel. It is under Glenn Lawrence. I don't podcast as much as I used to, but I do get on episodes with AV and Afi and Paul from Apex Mindset and a couple other guys in the manosphere.
Okay, so follow Alpha Villains. Lawrence, follow Alpha Villains, spelled correctly, Alpha Villains. Really quickly, super chat break, and then Annalicia wanted to ask you something, Glenn. Il Doctrine, thank you for the super chat. He says, a knight in shining armor has not ward. Dented armor, sim. The dragon is a man's unconquered evil. The cave is his mind. The gold is his beautiful self. Take that to her. Good luck in battle. Did everybody get that?
He's very Shakespearean. We love you for it. I'm here for all of it, Il Doctrine.
I am too.
What I wanted to ask, because again, so for me, it's confusing, and now I'm just at a place where, okay, Anna, maybe I'm trying to understand. So is it your position that men are less emotional, or that they're less, or that environmentally it's less acceptable for them to express their emotions? Because those are two different things. I just want to know before I move on with my questioning.
To me, honestly, I think it's a bit of both. I think society-wise, like we said, we taught men to toughen up, to not cry, to not show emotion. We have made society has said the only type of emotion that is accepted by men is anger. And that's what we have essentially taught that. The other part of it, when it comes to what was the second part? I'm sorry.
So it's nature and nurture. So if you're saying that they're more biologically, neurologically hardwired to be less emotional, is that your position?
No, it's not. It's not that they're less emotional. I don't think we're less emotional than women. I think it's the way that we process information. We have less of an emotional response initially at first.
So we're talking about output and affect. We're not actually talking about capacity.
Exactly. Not capacity. Right.
Okay,
we have the same capacity. It's the output that's different at times.
But so then that's what I'm saying, right? Then that actually has nothing to do with who would be more logical and who would be less logical. Do you see what I'm saying? Like if the capacity is the same, or even the differences are abysmal or negligible, then that means that one couldn't be more logical over the other, right? It's an expression. Because here, so my question to you is, would you agree that emotions lie at the root of all human motivations? Like at the root of something. So, and we think of emotions, satisfaction is an emotion, jealousy is an emotion, love is an emotion, hatred is an emotion. So it's a very wide range of spectrum when it comes to identifying the different emotions that humans possess. But do you think that emotions lie at the root of human motivations?
I think emotion can play a role. I don't think there's one thing that lies at the root of anything. And I'll say that like this. Emotional responses is how we, when we hear women say we want a guy that's more in touch with his emotions. Basically, you want a guy that's willing to show more emotional responses. All men are in touch with their emotions. We know what we feel when we feel them. It's the response is different. Sometimes we may feel a certain. No, but I'm getting to that point.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I'm not asking about output. I'm asking about the motivation. I'm just like, if we're gonna look at the motivation for all humans, right? If I just want to know if you think, or what do you think lies at the motivation? What's the root of all human motivation? What, in your estimation, do you think it's logic at the root of it, or do you think it's emotion? And because for me, I think it's almost impossible to find a behavior that's rooted exclusively rooted in rational thinking. I think that most of our behavior and our motivations are rooted in our emotions and what we want to get done to satisfy ourselves or someone else or a nation, or you know what I mean? So I think that, that's my question. Do you think that decisions or all behavior can be rooted in rational thinking? Or do you think that okay.
I think it's fit. I think there is a balance. I think there's some point that there's logical thinking and rational and emotional, feelings or emotional thinking plays a hand in it. Like for me, for instance, I'm somebody that if you tell me I can't do something, please believe, hold my beer, I'm about to show you up, and that's from an emotional response. That's me saying, wait a minute, you tell me I can't do this? You trying to put me in a box? Watch me shatter the glass ceiling. And that's an emotional response. And I do it from emotional analogical standpoint, knowing what I'm capable of also. So I think that there's a good mixture in what motivates people. Some people are motivated by knowing that they have the ability to do it. That's a logical sense. They have the logical knowledge that they could run, but they're driven by the emotional, element of being the fastest runner in their league. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a balance of both.
Right. So that's why I'm saying that one, like our behavior and our motivations couldn't be predicated on one over the other. And that's why I think it's disingenuous to say that men overall are more logical, because like motivations don't only come from logic. You have to have an emotional world to like it just, for me, it doesn't make sense. And I also wanted to say that because Jabari keeps on talking that talk in the chat, I read the study. I read that study a while back, and no one's disputing the structural differences in the brain. For example, men have less mirror neurons, right? Your ability to mirror the people that are around you and to see yourself in them.
No, I see what you're saying. Like, and I'm not okay if I'm coming off as saying that only men are logical or only all men are logical or more logical than women. I'm not saying that. I'm saying what we have learned over time. For like, we're thinking about reproductivity, continuing our legacy, living to see another day. Emotionalism has been very detrimental for men in reacting that way, reacting emotionally, having emotional outbursts and things. That they had to have honed that because it has been detrimental. On the other hand, responding emotionally has not been detrimental so much as it has been for women as it has been for men. And that's where I'm saying, like, it has been passed down. We have learned this to adapt ourselves to process information this way for the sake of oneself. And we could look at many different accounts, and we would look at it for example, if there's a mass shooter scenario, and I use the extremes to kind of paint the idea. If there's a mass shooter experience, going on right now, if we're all in the same room and there's a mass shooter, me and Ish will probably be running towards the mass shooter to stop him naturally. It's just an instinct, right? It's not. We're not looking at an emotional response. It's just an instinctive response to respond this way.
I think we're missing each other. I think because I'm in agreement with you, and this was my argument earlier. I was simply pushing back against the argument that men are more logical, biologically more logical. I was simply pushing back. My position is that men and women are both emotional. Our output and our affect, the way we express it, is different, and the brain is it's a use-based organ. So that was my position. You and I are in agreement, but I was just saying that men and women, our brains, there are some structural differences, even though they're very minor and statistically almost irrelevant based on all of the literature that I've seen. Like, men have less mirror neurons, which makes them less empathetic, or they're less predisposed to empathy, right? Which makes it easy to act violently or to commit murder or, sort of violent crimes, because it's easy to hurt people when you don't see that person as an extension of yourself and you lack the empathy to connect with people. So I'm in agreement with you. I'm not pushing back. My position is just that, like, I read the study, and the study didn't say anything about, in fact, I've read many studies that actually disputed and debunked all of these sort of long-standing misnomers with respect to men being more logical and women being this, these hysterical, emotional creatures. So that was my only pushback. But no, we're in agreement. I'm fine.
And I
Hey,
want to say,
Jen,
I just want to add this really quickly before we wrap. I love what Glenn said, because if we are in a room, you guys are running towards the mass shooter. But if I'm a woman and I'm there and my children are there, I'm running towards the mass shooter. So I don't know if that helps the situation, but it's like, I guess you do what you have to do, and we both have the energies. I'd rather like that you guys are running towards the mass shooter if I'm in the room. So I guess,
and that's just natural. Like that's a natural instinct. Like women tend to naturally protect women and children, and men typically naturally protect women and children. Why? Because children are the futures and women are the incubators of life. I really wanted to hit what this guy Shay is saying about self-deletion, and like it's a very bad toxic emotional belief to feel that way. Okay. If you feel that you have to self-delete yourself, then you're doing yourself a disservice by devaluing yourself. You're saying that your value is not good enough, and that is negative. That is a very bad thinking. Yes, women, there are bad women out there that take guys for their finances, that use them for a stepping stool, and there's guys that drop their wives as soon as they turn 35. Okay, I mean, there's bad behavior on both sides, but to hold your identity, and this is where a lot of guys get into the self-deletion, and this is the problem, is that so many guys hold their identity based off what one woman thinks of them, that once that woman no longer thinks that of them, that they feel like they need to delete themselves. And that's a problem. It's in their thinking. It's who cares what she thinks about you? It's what you think about you. And when you mirror that negative thought process about yourself, you are the one that at that point accepting that false narrative and choosing to delete yourself. And it's a terrible thing, because you're not allowing yourself to reach your prime. You're not allowing to reach your capabilities and your abilities to do things. You are choosing to believe a lie, a narrative that's not true. If a guy even thinks he's a loser, it's not. That's his thinking. Men need to change the way. If there are areas in my life that I'm shortcoming, and there's plenty, I know that those are my struggle areas I need to work up. But it's upon me to choose whether or not I'm going to accept it or not. And guys that tend to accept it and they choose to delete themselves, are choosing a negative way out instead of facing the battle.
Right. They're internalizing somebody else in their mind that when they shouldn't be. Somebody else is having space in their mind, and they're allowing them to take charge of their mind.
Let me do this last super chat acknowledgement. Thank you so much, Il Doctrine. You support me so much. Mwah, mwah, mwah. He says, I think men are individualistic and excess competitiveness, or competitive easier. I've been on for a while, so I apologize for my tongue tied. Explaining violence, lack of empathy, etc. Women are group oriented, explaining how well they access and apply emotions. Like, I don't know what else you were saying. I also want to say thank you so much, Glenn Lawrence, because that's what I've been trying to tell Shay this whole time. You have more bass in your voice. Maybe he'll listen to you, but that's what I've been telling him for the longest. He's much too concerned with what women are doing and wanting when he should be looking inward. I've been saying that the whole night. It is not about us. It is about you. Build it, they will come. It is not a myth, but you have to be good. And that has nothing to do with a tax bracket. That has to do with how do you feel about yourself and what you're putting out to the world and what women are seeing when they see you walk in a room. It's not about y'all worry too much about what women are doing when you're supposed to be fixing yourself. It's very important. Work on the inside. The rest will follow. This has been, I really want to end on the last note that Glenn Lawrence gave us about generally, what is a real man? It's about a man building himself up as a man. And I truly believe everything else will follow. Okay. So if you guys don't have any last thoughts, I am going to say good night to everyone.
I just want to say thank you for having me on
Good
the panel.
night.
I
Thank you,
appreciate
Jen.
this time.
Thank you,
Thank you
Jen.
so much. Glad I hit you. And Alicia, beautiful lady, thank you for coming up. Have a safe flight-ish. I know you got to go run and catch a flight. This has been amazing, and I want to do this again because this is how I love communicating, and I promise moving forward this is what's going to happen. I let go and cut off a lot of the riffraff that goes on here, and I know that means that I'm not going to have 5,000 views, but I will take it. I will take some good people on the panel and my little 100 views, and I'm good. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much. Please come back. Hit that like on your way out and subscribe and let people know about the channel and the topic if you liked it. Good night. Love you all.
Peace.
Peace. All right, guys, that was another episode of On the Block with Jen. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for showing up early. Thank you for rocking with me 4 hours. I really did not plan to go this long, but this was really good. And I think that it's important that we get these perspectives out and these messages. We're all out here trying to make it. We've all done, made mistakes, made the wrong decisions, fell in a hole, climbed back out. And I really, really, truly want, I think you guys know me enough to know already, I really, truly do want the best for everybody. And sometimes, that means some tough love and smacking you on the back of the head and telling you that you could do it. But, truth is good long as it's served with love. So I heard. All right, guys. So good night. And thank you for being here. Hit that like on your way out. Bye. Good night. Bye, guys. Mama's tired. Good night.